Yo, 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 what is happening, everybody? Welcome back to the stream. Hey, what's happening? How you doing, Kumar? Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. So, all right. Hopefully my audio and all that stuff is going okay. Guys, you gotta let me know. I haven't had a chance to test. I had to like completely reset up OBS, all that stuff because yeah, fun stuff. But anyway, yeah. How's it going? How's it going? So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. You might notice the title change. So I actually changed my title to an AMA, Ask Me Anything ZBrush Sculpting. I typically sculpt most of my projects or random projects while I'm streaming. And then I like to take questions and answer them as much as I can. So of course, at any point in time, you guys can always answer any questions. That's one of the things I'm here for. But I figured today we're going to start a new project. So last week we actually I remember asking you guys that if you guys would like to see older projects and stuff being built and like maybe repurposed, and a lot of you said yes. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Yeah, everything you can hear everything. Okay, perfect, awesome. So it might be a little hard to see, but I created this little Cthulhu baby, like learning baby sculpture. Might be a little hard to see. I don't have a full screen set up for my camera yet, but yeah, let's see if we can turn on the light maybe. There we go. Boom. There he is. So I did this about like 5, 6 years ago. This was like one of my little concepts that I ended up 3D printing him. And I thought it would be pretty cool to like maybe how would I build him today and kind of go through that process. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So this one is about blocking out and kind of making sure, kind of finding your shapes and so forth like that. So that's what we're going to be doing and just kind of not copying this one to one, but definitely moving it in like, okay, well, I have the initial shape here, so how would I do that? So that's what we're going to be doing today. So, but let's actually, I'm going to quickly get some music going. I'll turn this down a little bit. I always have music going on in the background. I keep it kind of light, but it's more for me than anything else because I like music when I sculpt. So hopefully that comes through and that is okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Let me grab my pen, reposition myself, and yeah, here we go, man, here we go. So I'm gonna maybe have to take a photo of this little guy, but let's go ahead and let's work on the body. Let's get this going. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and also too, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I do have a new keyboard layout and I also have a mouse so you guys can see when I'm left clicking or when I'm right clicking something because I think that's super important, especially when sculpting. So let's go ahead and save this and then let's move this down over here in the center and then let's just come here to, I like to save my projects. So we'll call this Baby Cthulhu. I'm probably going to spell this wrong, but that's okay. We'll look up the right spelling later. Okay, so we'll do this Baby Cthulhu block out. Perfect. All right, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my mesh because the very first subtool, that one is always, when you're saving as a ZTL, that one always is just like the kind of naming, the naming tool, because the ZTL naming, the first subtool takes that on. That's kind of a ZBrush quirk. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And let's just go ahead and call this the body for now. Hey, what's up, B? How you doing, man? All right. So here, I'm going to literally reduce this to something very low. So we're going to go 32 resolution on the Dynamesh, really block that out. Keeps it nice and low. And what I'm going to be looking for right now is just trying to find the rib cage. Again, he's kind of like he's a little chubby baby Cthulhu going to school. So that's what I'm going to kind of look for, the shape of everything. Hey, big guy, what's that software used to project buttons. I got to get this. So this is actually the overlay for the keyboard and the mouse is actually called OBS overlay. I can actually send you some stuff afterwards to kind of help you. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to control drag duplicate this because I want him to have a little bit of a belly. And I'm going to just go ahead and hit Control W, which will give me... Whoa. Okay, just give me a different poly group, and then let's get kind of a little bit of a midsection here. Hey, what's up, the Wild Noodlers? Yeah, I'm just good, floating some ideas, float around Lofton. Yeah, Lofton. I gotta come say, hey, what's up? What's up? What's up? Nerdy Butcher, how you doing? What up, nerds? How you doing? Zach, what's up, buddy? Going too fast for the program. I am going too fast for the program. It's freaking out, man. It's freaking out. Okay. Anyway, so let's go a little bit wider here. So for those who are just joining, I had to like reset up my whole OBS, so I don't have all of my like full screen stuff yet. But I don't know how many might remember this little guy, but this was a concept piece I did like 5 years ago, I think it is. It's been a while, and so I'm gonna remake this, but kind of see like how I would make it today. So a little bit of a different approach, which I think would be pretty cool. So everybody was like, oh yeah, do some older projects. So that's what we're doing. I think it's going to be good. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and control duplicate this guy. I'm going to turn off symmetry and rotate this around because we're blocking out the anatomy and we're going to go for the booty. We got to get the booty. Let's come over here. Let's come to modify topology, not delete hidden, mirror and welds. And let's turn symmetry on so we could start blocking in that shape right there. So I'm literally just looking for shape language at this point. Not going for detail. I'm not going for, you know, secondaries. Literally just block out shapes. So we're just getting a basic torso in here. I'm also going to go to poly groups, auto groups, geometry, mirror and welds. This will help keep things a little bit cleaner. So yeah, and that should be fine for right now. Now let's go ahead and grab our IMM primitive brush. So that's B for brush, I, and then T for IMM primitive. That will help us block in some shapes. I will watch it and learn. Let's go. Let's do it. Cheeked up on a Wednesday afternoon. You know, man. What up, John? How you doing, buddy? What's up, Jags? Got a Jags in the house? I love it. Yeah. All right. So with a lot of my blockouts, I keep things very simple. And I mentioned this at the beginning of the stream, but you guys might have noticed there's a little bit of a title change. So I used to call it like, come see how it's made, and I would do like random stuff a lot of the times. But I realized lately that I kind of more do like a Q&A session all the time, because you guys can always ask questions. So we're going to kind of figure we'll try a new title change for a little bit. Okay. So here I'm kind of just blocking in where the shoulders would be, very loosely. Okay. That should be fine. It's looking a little weird right now, but that's okay. And let's go ahead and get a cylinder. What's cool about cylinder, well, IMM brushes, is you could drag out a brush, and as you're continuously holding that left click that you see there, I can just pull it back up, and that will scale it, that'll kind of elongate it. So again, just kind of drag it out, gives you the initial shape, while holding that left click, just go back up, and then that will give you kind of a elongation of that. And then you can kind of place that where you need that to be. Of course, you can press and hold Control and also scale that if you need to. And then here, we're just going to go ahead, control, drag, duplicate that. And kind of place the arms here. There we go. Say something like that. Blood Rapture, what's happening, dude? Hey, Scarlet Void. Is ZBrush hard to use for a beginner? So, no, I wouldn't say it's hard to use for a beginner with the right tutorial. In the description on YouTube, there is some tutorials and stuff you can learn. But if you were to just come here to Maxon.net, everything's on our YouTube as well. But if you come up here to learn, you have what's called Z Classroom and Cineversity. If you click on the Cineversity one, we have like a total a whole getting started section that you can actually follow along with. Just come down here. There's ZBrush for iPad, which the UI is a lot different. It's cleaner, it's more modern, and that's a lot easier to learn if you're beginning. I'm actually finding that a lot of people are adapting the iPad version first, but the steps are the same for actual desktop. But here, and I'll throw this link in the chat, but here we actually have a Getting Started series, and this was actually recorded a couple years ago by Anna Carolina, amazing artist, super dig her work. So you guys have to, if you guys don't know who she is, she's also a live streamer here as well. So go ahead and check that video series out, because there's about 29, there's about 30 videos in there, but that also includes Redshift, which you don't really need to know that right out the gate. You're just learning ZBrush. So the first, I would say, the first 27 videos are like everything you need to get started with that. So definitely check that series out. That's going to help you out a lot. And then if you're actually if you're on the YouTube side right now, which I think you are, Scarlett, this channel has a ton of like Ask ZBrush videos where you could just look up like little quick things you might want to know. It has a lot of streamers like myself, because so I work for Maxon, so I'm the senior ZBrush trainer, but we have a lot of artists that come here, volunteer their time, and actually stream with us, and they talk about their processes. So being here is actually like really good as well. So definitely happy to have you here. But yeah, this is a great resources, and there's just so much content out there. But those will give you like the best approach. Okay. Actually, Big Brother Ian, what do you think is a great theme for a year one student? Cowboys, fantasy, etc. Picking a new theme rather than superheroes again for character modeling class. Ooh, that's a great question. Honestly, year one stuff, I would have to say anything fantasy would be kind of cool. Thinking back to some of the things I actually sculpted as a beginner, Slimer from Ghostbusters was definitely something I was like really into for a little bit. So I would say like year one students learning ZBrush in general, or just like the process, I would say, yeah, fantasy actually would be pretty cool. So that's kind of my take on it. And then really help them understand that like it's okay for things to look crappy. Like what's on my screen right now is terrible. Like Valley of the Suck is what my teacher Shane Olson used to call it. So, you know, yeah, kind of walk them through everything and so forth. Hopefully that's helpful for you, brother. Okay. So I'm just getting this rough anatomy shape in there. Actually, let's go here to poly groups one more time. And then mirror and weld. That keeps the poly group similar. There we go. So something like this. And, you know, he's a little boy. He's going to be a little, like, you know, a little boy Cthulhu guy. So we'll keep his torso kind of, like, straight. Okay, just kind of vibing this in. And then here, we're going to go ahead and pull in the calves a little bit. So when shaping the legs, legs are really interesting in shape, and this is something to kind of like really pay attention to. So if we were to go into like, let's call it, I'm trying to think of the safe word. Let me, you know what, let me just search it off screen. I want to, sometimes when you're searching anatomy, you want to be careful on what you find. That's important. Okay, there we go. That's fine. All right, just want to make sure what I show is appropriate. So here, you could see, like, if we're looking at this leg right here on the side, and actually I'm going to pull up I use this program called Epic Pen. It's super cool for, like drawing over things. Where are we at? Okay. So here, if we were to, like, look at the... Ooh, yellow is not a good color for that. There we go. So if we're looking at, like, the shape of the leg here, you see the outer quad is, like, really has this nice bow to it, and then the outer leg actually kind of replicates that kind of same motion. But on the inside, kind of comes in a little bit, and then it bulges out right there by the knee. So this would be where the knee part is going to be, and then the calf comes out and then back in and scoops this whole motion. So this is kind of the shape that we're looking for. So if I were to hide this here, come back over, this whole kind of shape is what we're vibing. That's what we're going to be going for here. So we want something very similar to that. And it doesn't matter if it's a child leg, if it's a female leg, if it's, you know, if it's a adult or whatnot. You kind of want those shapes to be relatively similar. So we're going to go for something like that. Just kind of get that language in there. Kind of do a light smooth. So here we'll push this in just a little bit. There we go. Again, we're not looking for super perfection at this point. Yeah. Hey, what's up, Pedro? Hey, Gurn. Hey, Ryan. How you doing? Man, the myth legend. Maybe. Yeah, Z Classroom is great, too. Oh, I didn't show that one. Hold on one second. That's my fault. Come here to the Learn and go to Z Classroom. Now, Z Classroom, I'm going to give you like a little bit of a preface here. Z Classroom, all of these videos today are still very much relevant to learning ZBrush, but these videos can go back quite some time. So if you go here into the beginner course, and then of course it says, yeah, I can't find. All right, let's just go to courses. Let's just go to getting started. Okay, that's not helping me out here. What is happening here? Just show all. Oh my gosh, what is happening? Okay, it looks like we're having website issues. That's not good. Anyway, yay, scroll down. Okay. This is weird. This is not... All right, well, here. Do yourself a favor. I don't know why that's not working right now. Looks like a website thing. But here, one of the things you could do is you can go to the ZBrush channel. And then what you could do is you can go to playlists. And we also have a ton of playlists here for you to find stuff. And so, yeah, here's that same Getting Started series. Here's also Ask ZBrush full catalog. This is kind of what I was like wanting to help you guys with. So this is something like myself and Paul Gabry actually did a stream a while ago that has a bunch of like tips and new feature stuff. So anyway, yeah, hopefully all that's helpful. But even still, all these videos and stuff, if you go back far enough, like let's go back to, oh, shoes. Like shoes is cool, right? Well, this one is 4 years ago, but you can still very much use this tutorial for how to do shoe retopology and so forth. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. Okay. All right. Now here, we're just going to quickly get in the shape of like the calf. Again, I'm not really worried about how perfect this anatomy is. I'm just kind of getting the rough block in shapes really quickly. And something to know about hamstrings or the back of the leg, like there's a very interesting connection point. There is what's called, at least in the tattoo world, a knee ditch. Knee ditch is like this like back of the knee, where if you put it back there, there's like an empty pocket type thing. And that's because of how the muscles will connect to each other. And so from here, like you kind of want this to have like a little bit of a scoop, but the hamstrings themselves actually kind of bulge out a little bit. They kind of round in this direction. So you want to kind of replicate that as much as possible. Okay, and then here we're just going to pull these in a little bit closer. Okay. And this is looking very funky, but that's okay. We'll get there. We will get there. Now let's go ahead, and one thing I want to point out real fast is, and again, we're going to come over here just so I can search it correctly. Child drawing reference. Okay. So something you want to pay attention to a lot when you're doing any type of specific like age is to kind of understand relatively like what the proportions are. So child proportions. So something like this is going to be really crucial to understanding what it's going to represent when we look at something. So if you can, definitely save an image like this, so then you'll have this kind of this idea. You can always reference it, or you could just kind of see what's going on. Having good block out of how things should be proportionally is going to help you out. All right, B, no problem, man. Hey, what's up, Hendrix? Yeah, I love the ZBrush, the tips from ZBrush. Yeah, we've been doing a lot of ZBrush Shorts lately for ZBrush for iPad, because ZBrush for iPad has been out for almost a year and there's not a lot of information on that. So it's definitely something that we're trying to do more of. And we'll also be coming out with some more ZBrush for the PC version as well. Okay. So here, if you need to load an image, a reference image into ZBrush, then what we can do is come up here to Texture and go to Import. And wherever you downloaded that file, so here I did it under Downloads, and I'm going to import that in as a texture. And now I can click this here and go ahead and say Add to Spotlight. And when I do that, it's going to bring me this guy. And of course, this is huge. That's okay. We're just going to scale this as we need it. And one of the things we're going to look for is the actual opacity. We're going to just kind of drop this down a little bit. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, especially if you've used Spotlight before, sometimes your brushes, they won't work with Spotlight. So if you ever find, like, right now it seems to be working, but if you ever do find that issue and you need to kind of come through, if you open up the brush system and go to Samples, you could turn off Spotlight projection. That's because you can actually use Spotlight to project textures sculpturally as well as color. Use the iPad version 98% of the time now. So good. I just need layers. Oh my gosh, dude, that's fantastic. You know what's so funny? Because I'm right there with you. Actually, I have my iPad all the time. And real quick too, again, I don't have my full screen here, but I was actually finishing the details of this guy, getting the hand textures and stuff in there, transferred it to the iPad after last week's stream. So yeah, man, it's super cool. I'm glad you're enjoying it. That's awesome. Okay, so here now, we're going to go ahead and we want to kind of look at our proportions a bit. And obviously, we are completely off on everything. So what we're going to do is let's isolate a few things. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the legs. Also, here's a little fun fact. A lot of times people want to hide, when you want to hide something, you'll press Control Shift and then you'll left click on those items, Control Shift drag, and then you're clicking these things, right? Well, what you can do is you can actually just Control Shift drag over the items that you want to show. So you say these two right here, and it's just going to grab those two little polygroups. And as long as those things are not welded to each other, Control Shift A will bring all of that back. Make that really easy. So, and I can do it the other way around too. I could just grab everything up here, Control Shift A, and then it hides those legs. And then I can come through and say split hidden, and now I have the legs. And we're going to also come in and do the same thing to the arms, right? So I can grab these, Control-Shift-A, Control-Shift-Drag, split. These are great ways to like just quickly, grab certain parts. You can also come over here, and while you're pressing Control-Shift, you can hit S to shrink or X to grow the selection. So you can shrink or grow that selection just with these hotkey shortcuts. So again, that's Control-Shift and S to shrink and X to expand or to grow. And then Control-Shift-A grows all that was selected at that point. So those are little ways that you can do things. We're going to come through and name our subtools, try to practice what I preach, because we'll merge it all together at some point. But all right. What iPad version do you guys use? I'm still on 2020, and it's pretty laggy even for low meshes. It's the pre-M1. Okay. It's the pre-M1. Interesting. How full is your iPad hardware? Because a lot of times, what I would say is, just like on the PC, if your hard drive gets too cluttered with way too much storage, like if you don't have enough storage, basically, then you're going to kind of get something similar where you'll start becoming really laggy. So see if you have a lot of files on there that maybe you can move some files off of and kind of clean up that space a little bit. But yeah, that's what I would recommend. I would try that first. I would say, but I will say this, just like on the PC version, the better the hardware, right, then obviously the better the experience type thing. So it is one of those things. Just like on PC, it's kind of the same thing on iPad. But try to clear off some files, because ZTLs can still get heavy. I have the 1 terabyte M4, and I have like 500 gigs worth of stuff on there. It's crazy. So pulling that stuff off might help you. Oh, it's very full. Yeah. Is there a shortcut for renaming subtool? So there is a shortcut. I mean, you can come over here and just come to the rename button, but you can make a shortcut for that. ZBrush shortcuts are pretty simple. All you have to do is, if you want to change a shortcut for any of your stuff, first off, you want to make sure to know how to save it. So you come up to Preferences, go to Hotkeys, and you can actually load, store, or save your hotkeys. So here, you should have a default one. So I would call these default because I just reinstalled ZBrush on this machine. So I would say, okay, that's good. And of course, I would want to store that. But what if I want to rename? I want to have a rename subtool shortcut like what you're asking. Then all you need to do is press and hold Control Alt and tap on that button. And at the very top, it's going to tell you top left. Might be hard to read on stream, but it will say press any key combination to assign custom hotkeys, or escape or move the mouse in order to exit. So here I would say, how about R for rename? Now it's going to say, hey, this hotkey's already been taken. You sure you want to reassign that? In this case, almost everything is taken, so we're just going to say, okay, great. So now here I should be able to say R, and with that subtool selected, and now I can change the name of it. So yeah, so here I can, like, let's say I just Control-Shift-D duplicate, and then I hit R, and then I can say test. Boom. And there you go. It's named just the way it is. So super easy enough to do. And then, yeah. So that's, yes, you could do that. And then you would say that. You would come up here to Preferences, and you would want to come through and hit Save. And then from here, you would be like, my custom hotkeys. Boom. And then you're good to go. And then if you wanted to change things back, you can just reload, at that point, and then hit store, and then you're good to go. And in this case now, R shouldn't work. Now, R is used typically for rotation on the gizmo. I never use R, so actually R for rename might be a good hotkey shortcut. But that's defaulted because we still have what's called the transpose line. We still have this guy. And R is very much used for the transpose line, and that's just why to switch between that. So R is still used in that sense, but if you never use the transpose line, then that actually might be a good hotkey shortcut for you to name. Anyway, hopefully that was helpful. Are you able to talk about posing? Absolutely. Yeah, Gurn, I could talk about anything. What's your... I will be going into posing with this in this stream or in the next one. So I'm streaming next week as well. So if I don't get to it today, but if you have a specific question regarding posing, go ahead and ask and I'll answer it as best I can. Will there ever be a world where we can preserve material names or name our materials for substance? That's a great question, Zachary. I don't know. That's an answer in which I could say I can't ever say yes or no to, like, you know, but that is something that, like, I take those types of requests into consideration. And when I talk to the team, when we're always trying to put up new feature requests, I try to see, I like store questions you guys ask just in case. So I'm like, oh, hey, actually somebody was asking about this. Do we think it's possible? So yeah. So I don't know is the answer, but I like where your head's at. Okay. So here I'm just going to quickly, and if you guys don't know, if you guys press Alt and left click on a subtool, I really like the new overlay mouse. It's cool. That's going to go ahead and quickly select the things that I need it to be. So in this case here, I'm going to go ahead and recenter this, turn off my wireframe, and I'm going to kind of get this a little bit more closer to the proportion of his body. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the legs. I'm going to come in. And if you guys want a really cool, like, advice when you're doing anatomy in general, something that I really started adopting more after a traditional sculpting class is go into your materials and then turn in black outline. And now you're looking at just a black silhouette of your character, literally moving away from the actual details, right? So let's zoom this up a little bit and then let's blow this guy up. Maybe make it a little bit more prevalent, if that's the word. Right there, perfect. So now here, what I can do is I can come through and I can start like kind of pushing in this a little bit. Now this isn't a perfectly symmetrical drawing, so, and that's okay. We're going to try to get it as close to symmetrical as possible. If we do something like the legs here, we can actually do ourselves a favor and get rid of one leg in this case. So let's go here to geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. And this way what we can do is we can just focus on the one leg shape. So here I'm going to scale this down, move this up. And again, just kind of like what I was talking about, it's the curve of this leg. We're going to get something like this. Now, this is human anatomy. We're just trying to get the decent shape of it. But maybe we keep this little Cthulhu guy a little bit more closer to that human-esque shape. Let's alt tap this. Who knows? We'll figure it out. But now I'm not even worried about anything else. Let's actually do this. Let's do the same thing with the arm. Let's do delete hidden. And this way we can kind of just get this kind of shape in place. There we go. Now here, this is where I know your knowledge of anatomy is going to come into play a little bit. But knowing where things are supposed to be and how they wrap in is going to be very helpful. So in this case here, I'm just going to move this around until we get something that we're looking for. This will be close enough for government work. There we go. And now I'm not going to follow that silhouette 100%, but this will give me closer proportions. Now let's come here. Let's go here. Let's turn this back on. Let's try to match this as best we can. And now I'm going to push this up a little bit. Okay. Okay, so that was a little too tall. There we go. That's interesting. Let's come back. Let's check everything. Okay, this will get us in a decent direction. We can always modify as required. We can also change it ourselves. So this is more like human proportions and stuff like that. If we want to go for like something a little bit more cartoony, we can always do this. So we can always go Chibi Proportions as well. And then we can go this route as well, which actually this is the vibe I think I want to do the most. So this is also something to kind of note. So again, anytime you want to do anything, you'll just come through and you can push this in this direction. Okay, so that's actually given me, which actually we're going to go the Chibi route. So let's close this. I don't need this right now. And then what do I need to do? Was it Control Shift S? Yeah, there we go. So I want to grab this for reference. Actually, let's go snip tool. There we go. So I'm going to want to grab this for reference here. So let me come here, say new. Yeah, we want this thing to be cute, but that's something that you definitely can use for your anatomy tips. So let's do the same thing now, but for the chibi version of it. And again, I'm just going to throw this in my downloads, and we'll just call this Chibi 101. Should be good. Okay, great. Come back to ZBrush. You guys know where we're going to go with this. We're going to go to texture. Let's hit Z on the keyboard. And we can actually delete this guy. So we can hit that X, come here to our texture, and let's import our Chibi proportions now. We should do the exact same thing that we want. So here's Chibi, PNG, perfect, come in. You named it, grabbed it, set this up. And now let's do this. So where we're going to want to be with these is more towards, honestly, probably more towards Chubby Chibi. I think that'll be great. Let's do that. So let's grab him. Let's move him over, come through, drop the opacity down a little bit. And let's do the exact same thing. And this is where it's going to be really cool to kind of show that you can do pretty much anything you want. We're still in the, quote, valley of the suck, right? So we're going to kind of get this crunched in this way. There we go. And here's a tip too. Go up to movie, go up to our timeline and say show timelines. And this way you can always reference the same position. And let me check the chat real quick here. But you can come up and hit a little marker. And now if you ever need to reference that scale, just use the arrow key to the left or the right to reposition. So if I move over here, left and right will reset. Yeah. Hey, what's up, Ikaruga? Hello, hello. Let's see here. Sorry, I missed the chat for a little bit. For posing characters, thinking about Transpose Master versus Proxy Pose as Z-spheres, does one have an advantage? Ooh, Gerd, that's a great question. So there is an advantage for one or the other. So the one advantage for Proxy Pose is that, let's see if we can load a mesh that will give you a better idea. So if I go to ZBrush projects, do I have something? Okay, yeah, let's just pull up the SpongeBob collab here real quick. I didn't mean to do that. Let's just go here to final pose. There we go. Okay, so here's all the details and stuff on this hand that I was pushing. But let's say this. Let's say that this whole thing was super dense. This is 5.4 million vertices. And I need to pose this now. I was dynameshing it and I was going crazy, but now I need to pose it. So what we can do instead is where Proxy Pose comes into play. So when you come into Proxy Pose, now what I'm going to do, and I'll turn the wireframe on so you can see it, as I start to reduce the mesh, it's going to give me a proxy cage. And notice that it's respecting my poly groups as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, let's reduce this by, I mean, this is 0.4%. So it's a little hard to see up here at the top. But if I close this down, I went from 5.4 million vertices to 13,000 vertices. So that's a huge jump, right? But now what this does is I can keep this in Proxy Pose. And then I can, like, let's refine this finger here. So I'm going to just mask off this one finger, invert that mask. And then now I'm going to come here and I'm going to want to really push this fingertip like this. So let's do that, mask that off. Okay. So now what I can do is with these things selected, right, I can now start moving this guy and say like, all right, yeah, perfect. Now, what's really fun about this is, of course, it's super low, but when I turn off Proxy Pose, it's now going to bring all of that detail back to the mesh at its highest level. And sometimes it takes a second, so we'll give it a second. That was a lot of information. There it goes. That took a little bit longer than I expected, but now take a look at this. All of my detail is back. And if we just solace out, you can see here, yeah, little stretching occurred, but easy enough to come through and clean that up. So this was like the main advantage of that. However, check this out. We can go one step further. So let's put this back to the beginning. Let's say, yeah, so we proxy pose this. Now think of this as like combining efforts. So not only can I use Proxy Pose to create a proxy cage that then is going to store all that point information, allow me to manipulate. You can even sculpt on it and then move it on over. But now let's say I actually want to use Transpose Master. So I can send that proxy cage of that super dense mesh on over to Transpose Master, right? So now I can come through and say, you know what, let's do ourselves a favor. We really needed to reposition this wrist. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll come in here. Let's just put it over here. Awesome. Yep, that's going to look good. Maybe smooth that out just a little bit. You know what? Actually use our sculpting tool and give us some wrinkles on the back. There we go. Let's invert that mask, maybe a few wrinkles just like that. So that's an extreme pose change. Now let me just send this back. So go to Z plugin, send that back. So now we're here. Perfect. And now Proxy Pose is still engaged. Turn Proxy Pose off to get all your detail back. So it's really about trying to make it even easier to get things in the proper position, even at higher levels, because there's still a lot of artists like myself that will use Dynamesh, or you just have a ungodly high resolution mesh. Because remember, if, like, let's say you have like subdivision level 5, but then you save that subdivision level 5 as an FBX, that FBX is going to get rid of all those subdivision information and only give you the high resolution that it was on. So now, you'd be able to use Proxy Pose to re-engage a lower version for yourself. So yeah, there's definitely ways you can do that. So that's the real advantage of Proxy Pose. The other advantage of Proxy Pose is that, let's say we want to do test posing, and this is your way back into this is kind of like a makeshift way into utilizing T-pose as your main mesh. So here, I do have subdivisions on this guy, and I want to keep these subdivisions on this, but now I need to test pose him. So I'm going to come into Subtools. I'm going to Control-Shift-D, copy this a couple times, okay? And I'm going to do it 3 times in total, because let's say this is the sculpting version that I'm working on, okay? Well, this one, I want this one to be T-pose. This one, I want this to be pose 1. And then this will be pose 2. Okay? So now here between pose 1 and pose 2, we have our T-pose. Let's go ahead and let's drop this guy right down here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to first, and actually I kind of did this wrong a little bit. So let me tell you why. I did this wrong because you want to set up in Proxy Pose first and foremost. That is because the vertice count matters. So let's quickly start over with the duplication. So first I have my sculpting version. I need to set him in Proxy Pose first and foremost. So let's find a Proxy Pose reduction that we like. So let's say, yeah, this is fine. Yeah, that's fine. Something like this. Now you want to watch out with fingers in here. So you can say, you know, keep your details set up a little bit. This will help you retain the fingers a little bit easier. There you go. And all of those like ear shapes and stuff. Okay, perfect. Now let's Control-Shift-D duplicate and say this is our T pose. Okay, Control-Shift-D duplicate, and this is our pose 1. And Control-Shift-D duplicate and pose 2. Perfect. Now, the reason for this is that all of these subtools have the same vertice count, and that's important to remember. So first take your main model, your sculpting version, and say, okay, I need to test pose these things, but now I'm going to have a T pose, a way to go back to the basics, and then go pose 1, pose 2. So let's go ahead and say, like, what's pose 1? Let's do solo, and just for the sake of argument, we're just going to turn his head. Yes. Head turns. A very Chris Evans pose. If you've ever seen Captain America posters, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Here, just going to come in, rename the, put this down. Shoulders back. Shoulder rotates back. Anatomy. There we go. Okay, perfect. Pose 1, and not only this, but we're going to completely rotate this way. Yes. All right, he's looking for his bird, people. Pose number 2, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to go ahead and we're going to have him kind of falling. All right, but here what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and kind of bend his knees a little bit. Oh no, what is happening? Okay, we'll do non-symmetrical changes. There we go. Kind of put that right in there, realign that, set that in center, right? Maybe this will be like this. And then maybe this back one right here will come through. And, all right, he's falling this way. I really decided to go elaborate for some reason, so there you go. Okay, there we go. Super exciting poses, I know. Now let's just rotate them around like this for now as an example. Okay, so we have pose 1 and pose 2 in T pose. So what's important about this? Well, now what we can do is we can go back to our sculpting version, all right, and we can go through to geometry. And now we could say overwrite pose, which this button is super important for you. And now we say override pose and look at here, pose 1. Is this the pose that we're looking for? Pose 2. What do we think about this? Nope. Go back to T pose, start over. You can switch between these at any point in time because this is something that now you're really looking for, you know, ability to try a few things. So really think about like, okay, well, what if you had a few different poses you need to quickly, you know, push stuff into? So it's really simple to like make a few changes, get a few different poses, and then say like, hey, does this work or does that work? And really just kind of help yourself out. So this is where Proxy Pose has a lot of strength to it. And so I would highly recommend giving this a shot. Ah, you get it? Thanks. Yeah, no problem. Let's see here. T-pose is a way to get all your subtools into one subtool. Transpose. T-pose is a way to get all your subtools so you can work to get them together. Proxy Pose is a way to create a 10th low-res one. Yeah, that's basically it. In short, Blood Raptor. In short, that's essentially it. Yeah, and hopefully, Hernan, that answered your question on that, because transpose the transpose master is literally just a way to get everything together and pose what we would call not old school, yeah, old school, ZBrush traditional, where you can get everything together and you can start moving and manipulating multiple objects. There's a few ways to do it, but that's the easiest way. It creates a duplicate, merges everything together at its lowest resolution, and then it allows you to manipulate. And then you can bring it back. And now you can do that with Proxy Pose. Okay, let's come back here to this guy right here. All right, we're coming back to our little Chibi Cthulhu guy. So I did actually, unfortunately, I opened up a new project which changed my movie settings. So let me just reposition that. Okay, great. And now I'm going to kind of put this guy right in here like such. Let's hit this marker, Alt Tap, and then I'm going to move this in. So hopefully that answered you guys' questions, but yeah, that's essentially the easiest way to go about it. Proxy Pose is really good for test posing and getting stuff kind of the way you would like to have it. Okay. Perfect. Now with the legs here, I know I have proper leg anatomy. I have okay leg anatomy. But we're going to go ahead and kind of crush this down. Scale it down, but kind of widen it a bit. There we go. I'm going to use the Move Infinite brush. So that's B for brush, M for move, and N for Move Infinite. And this is going to pull not just the front of the mesh that I'm seeing, but it's also going to pull the underlining mesh as well. Or, sorry, not the underlying mesh. It's going to push all the, it's going to move everything through that it's seeing through the exact same axis. Z depth, infinite on the axis. Hopefully I'm explaining that right. There we go. A little bit of a smooth. There we go. And then for the arms, I'm going to do the same thing. Hey, what's up, Visual? How you doing? Hold on, what's happening? This is great. Thank you. Sorry for the long question. No, not at all. Don't worry about apologizing. Actually, that's why my streams are. My streams used to be called "Come See How It's Made," and then I realized that sometimes I just stream and answer questions, and that's actually one of the things I love about my stream is that I'm here to help answer your questions. So it's now called AMA Ask Me Anything ZBrush Sculpting. So I'll just be sculpting, and if you guys have questions, that's what I'm here for. Let's see here. I want to make sure I didn't miss any other questions first. Another win, I printed Wolverine at 1/6 scale, and it's a lot bigger. Nice. Yes, absolutely. Let's see. Is it better to do poses with when the mesh is triangulated or when the mesh is quad? So it actually, okay, so long story short, it is better to have your mesh quadded, especially in ZBrush. It's better to have your mesh quadded in ZBrush because it's going to give you proper edge flow and it's going to look its best. However, depends on where you're going. At the end of the day, when you load it into a game engine, everything gets triangulated, but things get rigged and weight painted and things are a little bit different. For you, the short answer would be inside of ZBrush, quads are your best friend because you'll have proper edge loop. You'll be able to like actually sculpt along the flow of the geometry, making things a lot better. When you're learning retopology, everything is based on quads. You don't want any triangles if you can help it. There are times in which triangles are necessary, but again, at the end of the day, no n-gons, no triangles, quads for everything that deforms. That's kind of the rule of thumb. And notice I said for anything that deforms. So if it's something that bends, moves, and kind of does like your hand, if you get all of this deforms, it's moving. Is it stationary like a cup? Stationary objects don't necessarily, doesn't really matter. Like it depends on the project, but it doesn't really matter. But quads are the cleanest, easiest way to have. So try to keep everything, and as far as the mesh quality goes, try to keep everything as a quad. It'll just make your life a lot easier. Oh, ask me anything. Okay, favorite ice cream. My favorite ice cream is Rocky Road. It is one of my all-time go-to favorites. I love it. It's just kind of how I go. It's my vibe. It's my jam. Triangle is okay when it is in an area that does not bend or move, right? Yeah, Michelle. Yeah. If you have, okay, so again, this is where I'm going to always say if you're working with a team or you're trying to make sure that you put triangles, like you can't help yourself, but it has to have a triangle. Yes, put it someplace where it does not move. So like for a hand, put it on the back of the hand, because this back of your hand never moves, right? The wrist moves, the fingers move, but the hand does not. The inside, that does move. So you don't want triangles in here. So if you had to put triangles anywhere on this hand, in the back is the best place to go. Is there a way to do manual retopo in ZBrush to have more control or polygon? Sandman, yes, there is. There's actually quite a few ways to go ahead and do it. Let me finish this. Sorry, I just noticed this guy's all like, he is everywhere. Let me show you here in a second, but quickly let me get this caked up mesh here real quick. Let me get this just kind of like shaped for 1 second, and then yeah, I'll help you answer that. Yes, there's actually a few ways to do retopology inside of ZBrush, and they're both like really simple approaches to things. Okay, so he has some chunky boy thighs. Here we can actually just kind of do a control drag inflate, or actually rather deflate for this. Something I do real quickly, and then we'll get to some retopology, is I like to place knees or kneecaps just so I know that they exist. Gives me, it's a little bit of a guide for myself. There we go. Okay, and then let's come here real quick. Let's grab this. Realizing I don't really need that little bit, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete hidden. So I splitted it, modified topology, delete hidden. And then here, I'm just going to kind of give him a little bit of an A pose. There we go. Let's put this back a bit. And then we'll get to the head here in a second. Okay, so now we've refigured out our direction. Really ugly block out, but that's okay. That's half the battle. All right, so retopology inside of ZBrush. Let me save this real quick. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And then here, I'm going to load up this anime head. Okay, so there's a few ways to retopo. I'm going to show you my favorite way to retopo, because for me, it's simple, and simple is good. So the easiest way to retopo is called Z-Sphere retopo. So I'm going to load in a Z-Sphere, and if I hit the transparency button down here at the bottom, I actually can come through here and scale this down and move this just in the middle of the head. It doesn't really matter its position. It's really just for you to kind of know that that exists there. I'm going to turn the transparency button back off. And now we're going to come on down to the bottom. And we're going to come in here into adaptive skin. Now, the adaptive skin usually is defaulted to a Dynamesh mesh, but we want it to be quad based. We want clean geometry. So I'm just going to say Dynamesh mesh resolution to 0. That's it. Leave it alone. We're good. Then from here, we're going to go into topology, which is at the bottom, and say edit topology. And now what we're going to be able to do is actually with our W, with Q, sorry, we have Q for draw, W for move, E for scale, R for rotate. That's the keyboard shortcuts. So we have our ability to draw. So here we're just going to say Q to draw. And now with this engaged, I'm going to go ahead and start picking some points. Now you'll notice that I get a little white arrow. That's telling you the direction flow that you want to go. So I would say, like, let me put up a point here. Oh, look, if you make a mistake, no big deal. So again, put 1 point, put 2 point, 1 point. Hold on a second. I'm backing up all the way. Okay. So we're going to do touch, 1 point, 2 point, draw up, and then from here, draw over and touch. There's our first quad. So the white arrows, once you get your first quad drawn out, you then want to follow the white arrows. Beforehand, don't follow the white arrows. Just put your 1 point down, 2, 3, 4, and then touch it. There you go. There's your main quad. Now we want to follow the white arrows. So now I'm going to put 1 point here. Sorry, we're going to... So if this happens where I put 1 point here, notice it's like, it's putting this crazy line. Just touch out here in empty space, retouch the point you want to start from, and now start drawing. So we're going to come through here. If I rotate, all right, it's going to go ahead and kind of deselect a point. That's by default. So I just retouch a point, come through and click this. Right, click here, click here, click here. And then from here, boom, boom, boom. Right, if I rotate out on the side and I'm pressing and holding Alt and I'm just left clicking normally, not right clicking, I can come through and start making my points. Now we're just going to do a simple loop here, nothing too crazy. I'm not really counting either, so I'm going to connect that point there. I'm going to touch out here in empty space, come over here, and I'll touch here. Now I could hit W, right, which will allow me to move points around, and I can do this positioning here for this. Now I want to see what this looks like, so I'm going to hit A on the keyboard, and now that's going to go ahead and show me the mesh, but you can't really see it. So I'm going to hit Shift F on the keyboard to open the polyframe, or just turn this little button here. And if I hit solo, you can now see here's the actual points of it. So, and of course, I had it what was dynamic subdivision was turned on, so we hit dynamic subdivision turned off, and that actually can be found under our geometry. And oh, it's actually. This is a lower resolution. Okay, just hit Shift D for scaling down. Actually, yeah. So just hit Shift D to get us the low resolution. And now you can see all these different points. Hit the A button again to then start being able to re-manipulate these points further. So A is for previewing your mesh, kind of seeing where things are. And then from there, hit A again to drop that down. And this is how you can continue forward. Then we hit Q, and then we just touch a point we want to continue starting on, and we can just start drawing our points out. And this is like a really great way to do any type of retopology. Oh, look here. I just created my first pole. Boom, boom, boom. So this is the way to go ahead and do it. Let's say you're satisfied with this and you're ready to go. If you're completely satisfied with your mesh, what's cool is that it's on a Z-sphere. So this is going to allow you to kind of separate things out. Here, if I go to my adaptive skin menu, I can actually say make adaptive skin. And what that will do is that will make my mesh right there. It will give me a duplicate of that mesh that perfectly matches that size. So then I can come through my subtool, say copy, go back into my project, and hit paste. And now my mesh is perfectly lined up there. And what's fun about this, right, what's good, is that you can always come back into your Z-sphere, and you can come through your topology, turn edit topology back on, because sometimes it'll be turned off by default. So especially when you leave your project, so turn it back on, and then again hit your draw, click a point, and then just start moving forward. And just keep drawing at that point. So you can always just start and stop your projects. Start and stop your projects whenever you need to. So this is a great way. If you need to delete points with the draw selected, just press and hold Alt and just tap the points or the edges that you want to delete, and that will do that for you. And then you can start back over. And what I recommend with doing it this way is that you just tap one time, left click in the empty space to kind of reset your cursor, because what it's doing is ZBrush is remembering the last point that you selected, and then it wants to work off of that point. So you can reset that sometimes by just tapping in the empty space, reselecting the point you want to go, and then continuing forward. And you just follow the white arrows. So that's retopology's one way to do it. The other way to do it, and then I see some other questions, so we'll get to those in a second. The other way to do this is actually through a ZModeler. And so with ZModeler, what you can do is you can grab, first we need a quad to work off of. So we go B for brush, I for IMM, and H for half, because there's a single poly in the primitive's half IMM brush. And of course, we can drag this out, say something like this, and we can do a split unmasked points, and then we have this. Now, what we can do from here is we can open up the comma key, the light box, comma key, go into brush, and come over to ZModeler. And there is a special retopology Z modeler brush that has all the settings ready for you. You just double click that, and now what we can do is we can drag out an edge loop. And if we go transparency, we can actually see a little bit more what we're doing, right? And this will actually start snapping together. And you can grab just a point here, you can reposition stuff, and you can just start snapping things together and moving it as needed, and it will conform to the mesh as best you can. You can also, when you're dragging out a single, you could tap Alt to do you know, an entire row, or you can press and hold it, and you can actually drag out a whole shape. Say something like that. And then you can tap Alt again to continue forward. So this way, you can get multiple rows done quickly. Say something like this. And then just, you know, they snap together. And then you can just do Shift Relax for smoothing. So if you needed to kind of smooth your edge loops a little bit, you can just do smooth and then do a relaxed. And then you can reposition stuff as needed. This is the second way to do retopology inside of ZBrush. Or just get something like a simple headband around your character, and you just need to make some quick changes for that. So this is a way to go ahead and do that. Great questions, by the way. Let's see here. Let me scroll up to the top, make sure. All right. Hopefully that answered your question, Sandman. Let's see. Flick says, hey, could I ask you where you find the active total count after I accidentally remove it from my UI? Oh, yeah, great question. Great question. Yeah. Oh my God, where is that? Hold on one second. That's a great question. And you know what, something? Hold on, give me a second. Let me think. Where do we put that? Give me 1 second. Why do I think it's under... Hold on. You know, Hold on. Hold on. I knew this one. And now I need to remember where we did it. Hold on, there's focal shift. I will find it. I am now on a mission to find it. So hold on. It's funny as I actually thought of this the other day. And then for some reason, I was like, oh, that's where it is. And then I just kind of ignored it. It's not under brush. It would be under... Is it under stroke count? No. Hold on. If somebody knows, go ahead and chat it. I don't remember, so now I'm just kind of hunting for it. But we will find it so we can answer it in the stream. Not a problem, Sandman. Happy to help. No, that's not it. Oh, why am I blanking on this? Where did we put it? I thought it was under draw. But it's not under draw. I may just Google it. I'm not ashamed. I can Google. But I feel like it's not under color. Wouldn't it be under color? I thought it was under transform. Am I just blanking on that? Let me see here real quick. Modifiers, no. Info, no. I like being stumped. That's always nice. And what's funny is Paul would probably laugh at me right now. It's not under help either. Oh, God, where is it? Welcome to the stream where we're going to watch Ian struggle, and then we will find it. It's not under modifiers, not under info. Where the heck did we put that? Honestly, I may just have to Google it for you because I don't remember. It's not something that I typically look for on a day-to-day basis. Is it under strokes? No, it's not under strokes. Modifiers? No. I apologize. Oh, wait. Is it under preferences? It might be under preferences. That's probably why. What would it be under? Aha, here it is. Found it. Okay. So it's actually under preferences, miscellaneous. There we go. So here you have your active total points. Active point counts, and then your total point counts. There we go. There we go. So, yeah. And yeah, there you go. And somebody mentioned it in the chat, and I totally blanked on it. Yeah, press and hold control. I'll tell you where that's at right there. Thank you for that little tip, but I was like surrendering. So yeah, go to preferences, go to miscellaneous, and go to the actual active points, and then the total point counts. Yep, we found it. We did it. It's the small victories, guys. It's the small victories. Yeah, it's under preferences. Perfect. All of you. Yes. There you go. There, I looked at the chat. Got it. Thanks. It's pretty hidden for one. No, that's a good one. It's one I don't typically do often either. So, but great. It's also, this is how I learn, and this is something too that I think is important. Is that I learn by trying to find it myself. I'm very stubborn that way, but it's how I retain information. If somebody just tells me and then I go do it, and then I'm gonna not remember it. So that's something for me to kind of like, that's also kind of my way of doing things. So it's just knowing how you learn that's super important as well. But we got there. Awesome. So yeah, I'm using the chat from OBS, which is connected to Restream. So yeah, there's a delay. And also, if you're on YouTube, there's a 20-second delay between YouTube's connection and my stream, which also is not helpful. And that's a YouTube thing, unfortunately. I've got a relatively detailed organic sculpt. And now I realize too late that I need to break it up into polygroups to get some UVs to work properly. There aren't any hard angles to group by normals. What's the best option for how to set them up? Brute force and ignorance and paint with them with ZModeler? Oh, okay. So you have a detailed, okay, you have a detailed organic sculpt, but it's too late to break it up. So it's all welded together. Have you Z-remeshed it? Like, have you... Because what I would do is easiest way to break something up. So here, let's do this. Let's come back. I keep loading this Cthulhu project. Ooh, what happened? I opened a project and ZBrush crashed. It happens, guys. It happens. 100%. You 100% agree with same for you. I easily remember something I struggle with. Yeah, because I'm gonna forever remember that struggle. That struggle is gonna help me out something fierce. So, okay. So first things first. To your question, GD, is your mesh already clean? If your mesh is already clean, then it should be easy to then just kind of select some polygroups as best you can and kind of make that work for you. So like, let's say, like, let's take this dog, for example, and the legs on the dog. Well, first thing what we need to do is kind of identify where some points can be. So if you got a clean mesh, like let's take this tail, for example. If we press and hold Control Shift and then go to select lasso, we can actually select an edge loop and separate that just like such. So we can say, you know what, this edge loop right here, that's where I want that polygroup to start. So then you can go to polygroups and say auto groups, because now that's technically just temporarily selected as far as, or it's temporarily detached. It's still all together. You just hit a certain section of it. And then when I hit auto groups, that changed the polygroups to a new group. Now I can pick the yellow and the green vertice, the connecting vertice, as one point, and then hit Control W to give me a different poly group. And so this could be a way to find the flow of things. Like this here, the lower section of this leg, I would also say like try to find points in which, notice here we have a deformation loop, and that's to help kind of, you know, keep things nice as this dog leg bends. So maybe come through and see if you can find a loop. Now, if you can't find a loop and you're getting spirals, then I would say this geometry is not super clean, but it's, you know, it's kind of going to give you some interesting issues. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to, like you can just come through and mask off and then say here, but now notice you got this interesting stepping effect happening. And sometimes that might be unavoidable, depends on what mesh you're working on, but you know, you do want to try to avoid that stepping because you want the seam lines to be as clean as possible. It just depends on the project. What I would recommend is actually prepping your mesh, and you can actually use ZBrush if you have if let's say you have some resolution to it, and let's say it's dynameshed. So at this point, let's actually make it dynameshed. Let's find a resolution. Say 750, no blur, and hit dynamesh on that. Okay. Now we have a dynamesh model, and it has some details on it, pardon me. So what we can do now is we can do two things, right? We can actually ZBrush using polygroup it, or we can just kind of try to find our own version of things. So here, I would always try to find interesting points in which to polygroup something. So maybe here, I would say like let's mask this tail off like that, and then Control W to give me a different polygroup, right? And now I have this. So what I would do is what's going to happen is we're going to ask ZBrush to give us some polygroups. There we go. Kind of based off of certain points, and we're going to just kind of come in and do something like this, right? And this way we can hide it. Maybe we'll come in, we'll do this part here, hide this. Maybe come in, do something like that. I don't know, maybe this all would be one piece actually. Maybe this would be one piece, depends. Anyway, just for demonstration purposes. Okay. And let's just do this for this part right here. We're going to get the leg going, come in, maybe do something like this. Okay, there. Now we have all these different polygroups. What we can do is use ZBrush to kind of help us with this. So here, you see all this kind of stepping that's occurring in the polygroup itself. So we can actually go to our polygroups. And if you have a lot of detail, make sure you come up here to the top of the history bar and hit Control Tap to give us a store history. And then from here, what we're going to do is go to deformation, and we're going to do polish by groups. And that's going to help us give just a little bit of a cleaner line, and it's kind of going to squish those points together. And then when we ZBrush, so here's like my bread and butter ZBrush tips. So come over to ZBrush, and then at this point I have 393,000 vertices, and so my total polygon count, I'm going to want at least like, you know, something decent to start. So let's just say 15. We want to keep our groups, but let's turn our smooth groups down to 0. And adaptive size, let's keep this down to about 0 as well. The reason why I keep adaptive on, but I turn it to 0, is because it's literally going to take the quads and it's going to move the quads in a way that honors the mesh's unique shape, but keeps them as even as possible. And then here, I'm going to hit ZBrush. Now, my model's symmetrical, so do make sure that symmetry is turned on. Makes it a lot easier for ZBrush to do its job. And then hit ZBrush. And now this will kind of like break up your model without breaking up your model. This is going to give you different polygroups. They're gonna, and the edge flow is going to follow those polygroups as best as it can. So see here, that's all nice and neat. And if you get stuff like this here, like this little diamond shape here, This is where you can clean the mesh up. So you can go into ZModeler, hover over this point, and you can say like, oh, I need to stitch this point and this point together. Boom. That part's done. Go back to move, and you can kind of like re-clean that up a little bit and get some nicer mesh. And then this will give you something a little bit closer. So you don't want to do that for all the sections, because then you can isolate certain parts. So I do this frequently. Hopefully this is something what you're looking for. The only other thing I can really think of is like, sometimes you have to break things back up apart, which sucks. I've had to do that before. But this is definitely ways that you can kind of minimize that if need be. And a lot of that's also just planning as you're working. Like if I open up my Cthulhu piece right now for like the 15th time in this stream, it seems. If I open this block out part, which we haven't even gotten very far, I'm keeping things separate as I move, which will help things over. So hopefully that helped out. Want to know your thoughts on star poles, says Sheriff in retopology. Do they have an effect on subdivisions and UV mapping? Or even if you avoid them at deforming areas? Oh, that's a great one, Sheriff. So the way I was taught with it, and kind of what I also preach, is treat poles a lot like triangles. You don't want them as, you don't want a lot of them. You want as few as possible. But poles are, I think, one of the unavoidable things that you do need, because sometimes the way the mesh is flowing, it's just unavoidable. You're going to get a pole there. So yeah, try to put them in areas that don't deform too much, and that there's enough supporting edge loop around the things that are needed on purpose. So usually, like, you might see poles like on the chest or on the back. If you can avoid them, but sometimes they're necessary. They're not as bad as triangles, but they can cause weird mesh shapes if it's deformed incorrectly. So I would say definitely do that. So yeah, that's kind of my take on poles. Because then too, like, is it a 5-star pole? Is it a 8-star pole? At some point, it becomes like an n-gon, right? And you kind of need to avoid n-gons, because n-gons don't subdivide that easy. Like, they don't subdivide, and that makes for big problems. The best example of that is actually on this cylinder, right? If I start subdividing this, so Control D, Control D, Control D, turn the wireframe. Look, I mean, you get all this stretching that's occurring here on the shape. Like, you want to avoid this as much as possible. A 5-star, pole, that's not like a pole with 5 points intersecting. That's not gonna be the end of the world. It's just try to avoid the quote deformation areas if possible. And that's my take on poles. What happened here? Oh, I must have switched. Oops, there we go. Okay. Yeah. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that made sense. I tend to ramble quite a bit with stuff. Okay. Is there a rope brush in brushes, beta tester brushes? But when I draw it out, the curve thickness is very small. How can I change the default thickness, increasing the brush size? So yeah, so if you come up here to brushes, and then you come over to the beta test one, so the insert rope brush is just an insert. Yeah, so it's going to, let's clear that mask. So here's really an interesting thing. Real fast, I have a stored history, and when I'm drawing my mesh, it's actually, the rope is going in weird places. If you clear this undo history, so Control Tap to store a new one, Control Tap to undo it, that's going to help the placement of that brush. Yes, increasing the actual brush size is going to do that. That's going to kind of help out with that. However, yeah, it's one of those brushes where somebody made it, and then it was kind of like they kind of just stopped the idea of it. So here, yeah, you just want to increase the shape of it. You could also just kind of make your own as well if you wanted to do that. But yeah, you need to make the brush really big in order to then make this work. What we could do, if we wanted to, we could just kind of like, quote, remake this a little bit, or we can adjust this to make it work a little bit more friendly for us. So what I would say is go up to stroke, go up to curve and say as line. And let's just turn off symmetry for a second and let's draw out our rope and then clear that curve and then just split our unmasked points. So then we have this brush here. And what I want to do is let's kind of recenter this back to center. So let's come over here. Let's rotate this maybe 90 degrees. Trying to get this as true as possible. So straight up and down. There we go. Maybe something like that. That's fine. And reset that. And then let's actually scale this up. Okay, maybe, yeah, scale this up a little bit. No, don't do that. Okay, we can crush this down a little bit. And then let's actually kind of cut this off a little bit. Let's do this. Let's actually use... Should we do it? Should we do it? Let's knife curve this. Why not? Ah, yes. Okay. Oh, did I break it? I broke it. Yep, there it goes. It's because the mesh isn't fully clean. But yeah, we can remake it and then make it a better size for that. I can also show you how to make it from scratch. And then reading the question here, 1 second. Restarting. I crashed twice. And that's because I can tell you why I crashed. And I crashed on the knife curve brush because when you have multiple separated meshes, they're not welded together, and you go to cut, it's trying to stitch it all together, and it can't do it. It was an impossible task, as they say. So, well, we can make our own. So modifying that one would be fine, but we can also make our own. And let's do that. So here, okay, so let's do this. I see a few other questions, and we'll get to that in a second. So here, let's actually do this. Let's go to our cylinder real fast, and I'm going to give it some cleaner topology. So what I'm going to do, and this is kind of my shortcut to cleaner topology, is that I will actually use, if I just want to use ZBrush for this, I'll come up here to transform and turn on active symmetry. And then I want the X and the Z so I can get the front and the back uniform together. And then if I were to go to geometry, ZBrush, turn on detect edges. Detect edges, and then do something really low like 1. It's going to give me something like this, and I'm going to go low. And I can get some pretty clean topology, just ZBrushing off of the X and the Z axis. So turn that back off for a second. Okay. So here, I can go ahead and stretch this up, say something like this. There we go. And I'm going to use the modeler. Get rid of these edge loops real fast. And then I'm going to just kind of add in a few extra ones, so multiple edge loops, and then keep my poly groups. And actually, you want to make sure that I don't have any creasing on that. I'm going to have creasing on that, that's fine. We could just say uncrease. So go to crease and uncrease all. There we go. Then I'm going to just duplicate this right next to each other. So yeah, you have 2 different ones. You can have different polygroups, Control W, and then just kind of reset this back to home. Again, scale this up if you want. With the gizmo turned on, just go up here to our deformer type, and we can actually say twist. And we can start to twist both ways. So we could say, yeah, that works there. And again, if you want 3, like, let's come back for a second. Right, we can also, like, you can make this 3. So let's control drag this. Recenter that, put this in center. Maybe come in like this so you can have 3 ropes, whatever you would like to have. Recenter that back to mesh, come in and just again say twist. And kind of twist this around so that follows that pattern. And then you can say, yep, this should be good, except that mesh, right? So this should be fine. So then you have like this kind of base, this little base bit that you need. Yeah, that should be good. This is also quite big, so we could turn that down a bit. There we go. Something like this. Now from here, we should be able to just come in here as a simple version of this. We can go a little bit further if we need to. If we go to curve and we turn this, first we need to make this a actual brush. So let's go up to our brush and say create, and we need to create an IMM brush or an insert mesh brush. So create insert mesh and say new, and this will be our rope, right? But now we should be able to just come up here to our stroke and turn on curve mode. And then when we come on, we should get something pretty funny right there. So, and it's probably how I built it actually. Come over curve mode, probably need to set a few different brush types. So we can come over here to our brush and we should probably adjust some different settings. It's been a little bit. I haven't made a brush in a while here. So curve resolution, we can increase the curve resolution. Weld points, I believe I want to set this to. And should be fine. It's giving me a funky donkey. Man, yeah. Strength modifier, brush modifier, no. Curve resolution, do I want that up? Oh, you know what? Probably because I didn't cut the parts a little bit different. Oh, there we go. Okay, I just turned off try parts and hit stretch, curve resolution up. There we go. Boom. And now you can have your own, and you can change the brush size to make your own. There you go. So yeah, so go back to weld points, turn off try parts, and then hit stretch, and then hit your curve resolution at 25. And this will give you a nice big brush. And then you can save that out as needed. So here you can come up to the brush. And actually, this is what I recommend doing. So save your brushes. Go ahead and let's close that down. Let's actually open up a new cylinder. Say make polymesh 3D. And now what you could do is with that brush, you can actually start to draw things out. And see here, like it's actually embedded deep into the mesh here. So let's change that. So let's come back to our brush settings and we want to go to depth and we can change the depth of this. However high it's going to sit off of that curve at any point in time. And then the other thing we can do is we can actually come up here to our picker and we can go to our depth and then make sure it's set to continuous Z so that it's always looking at what it's setting on. So that way it's always setting on that spot. And then we can just wrap things around if we need to. There we go. Just kind of draw that. So once you get your your main shape and stuff done on this, you can actually come up to brush and do select icon so you know what that thing is doing. So again, if you wanted to come through and have like a second brush, go to brush and say select icon and then just save this out. And now you have that brush and you can call that whatever you need to, and then you're good to go. So that's how you can make your own. So then it's a little bit easier at that point to then make your own stuff. I know I kind of just ranted. I do that sometimes. So, but yeah, there you go. All right, I missed a bunch of stuff, so I apologize. Let's see. Initially, I wanted to ask, is there a way to sculpt symmetrically after posing a model in asymmetry? There is a little bit of a way. Yeah, there is a little bit of a way. It's not 100% going to work the way you think it is, but it is something that you can do. It's actually called posable symmetry. I see a bunch of conversations talking about it, or just talking about posing in general. But yeah, there is a way to do what's called posable symmetry. The way this works is you need your mesh to be truly symmetrical on one axis and one axis alone. And if you don't do that, then it's not going to work. In this case here, I do have, truly symmetrical mesh here. Now, it's been a little bit since we've used it, but let's go ahead and just get our basic move brush here. So here, at the end of the day, like let's say we come through, if I remember how to do it right, we'll find out. Let's learning together is how we tend to do things here. So I'm going to just move the arm and make sure I'm not going to do a crazy position. We're just going to move the arm here. There you go. Okay, arm is achieved. Now, here, if I turn on symmetry, obviously, that's not going to work, right? So if I come up here to transform and I activate symmetry, I now have a thing called use posable symmetry. And if I turn that on, if it turns on, you're good to go. Now, notice that as I'm sculpting, let's turn the wireframe off. Let's subdivide up a little bit. And again, I believe this is actually per subdivision level. It is. So get to the subdivision level that you want to work on. Come up to transpose, say use posable symmetry. And now here, I'm going to go ahead, start making some lines. And you'll notice that the lines are doing what it's supposed to be doing. So there you go. There's brachialis coming into above the bicep and the pectoral and the delts, right, coming through. So all of this, there's your bicep muscle there. There you go. Boom. And all of those changes are occurring here. If I come in and start coming in here, all those changes are happening over here. And so posable symmetry would be your answer to that. Does it have any disadvantages, since a lot of artists don't seem to use it? Yeah, so the disadvantage of it is that you have to have one axis truly symmetrical, and a lot of characters are asymmetrical. So there's a lot of times where it just doesn't work. It kind of fails. And it's because it's very specific to what it needs. So yeah, that's kind of the downside to it. But at the same time, it's really good for like early posing if you hadn't made any major asymmetrical changes to your model. But yeah, if you do have, like, let's go back here in time. Okay. We go back here in time, and let's just close the brush menu, and let's just delete the high and the low. And let's say this is what we're working with. If it didn't work, like come over here and let me pull this mesh here. Maybe that will cause it to, maybe this will cause it to go funky dunky. Let's see. Let's come back up to transform here. Nope, still works. Okay. Let's see. I think it's a vertice count thing. Anyway, if it doesn't work, which I don't know if there's a good example of it, but all you need to do is just come over here and mirror and weld on the x-axis, and that should make it work at that point. But what you need to do is, like I said, make sure your model's truly symmetrical. So before you even pose it, just test it. Does that work? Yep. Delete it if you don't need to. And then come through and make your pose, right? And in this case, we'll do an asymmetrical pose. There you go. And then, there you go. Kind of move that like such. And then come over to transform and give it a shot. There you go. And then this should work. So yeah, just knowing that it's there is helpful, because that's going to get you a lot of the way to what you're going for. So just make sure it's truly symmetrical on at least on the x-axis. And you're asking, is better to pose at the end anyway? It depends on where you are in your workflow. I do what's called test posing. So a lot of times when I get my character most of the way there, it's mostly blocked out. Then I'll turn around and actually do a test pose and see if there's anything wrong with it. Sometimes you think everything is laid out correctly and it's starting to look good, but then you go to pose it and then you realize that proportions might be off. The overall feel and look of it might change. So yeah, it's definitely something that helps you. So my philosophy workflow, my workflow is basically take your block out to where the silhouette looks really good, and then just start getting things kind of cleaned up to where you're like satisfied, but you haven't truly moved into secondary forms yet. And then do a quick pose and see if it works for you. Does the legs work the way they are? Like, for example, like, you know, our arms are designed for us to eat, right? It's for us to feed. But what if the arm is so long and then you bend it and then it's literally like so long that it doesn't even go to the mouth? It can never go to the mouth. There's also there's a few I don't want to throw any shade, but there's a few creatures in movie cinema that have done this where it's just massively long arms and it can never feed itself. So because of that, like, you know, you want to check, does that proportionally make sense? Do things work as intended? It's helpful, and you sometimes will catch that once you move into pose, so it's helpful. Yeah, learn anatomy. Yeah, that's gonna that's gonna be very helpful. Xenomorphs called out. Yeah, I was thinking about, what was it, Alien Resurrection, that funky monster with the skeleton. That's the one I was looking at. The arms are too long. It's just too long. A xenomorph, I think, actually makes a lot more sense than that creature. Anyway, we won't rant on that. Look at that one if you want to look that one up. I won't scare anybody. But yeah, anatomy is key for anything. That's going to be really helpful. But yeah, so there you go. Posable symmetry. All right, let's load up the baby Cthulhu. Let's get this block out of the way. So we need to get the head shape in there and stuff like that. So let's do this. So we do have the body. Let's go ahead and get a cylinder in here. Yeah, there we go. Turn symmetry on. Okay. So anyway, for those who are just joining, this is a character that I built quite a few years ago, like 5 years ago, I think, maybe longer. It was a little concept of like a baby Cthulhu ready to learn. And this is what we were intending to block out today. I've definitely have gone on a few tangents since then, but you know, it's okay. Okay, let's just go ahead and get a cylinder in here for the neck. There we go. Just so we have a base of a neck. There we go. That should be fine. Okay. Here, let's go ahead and come back here. And we're just going to go nuts for it. So and I'm just kind of blocking out a head shape. And I'm not copying this one-to-one, by the way. I'm like taking this as an idea, but I'm going to change that to be something different. So kind of my own little design, but we'll get something a little different. Okay. And let's just do this. I like to go into Dynamesh. I'm a Dynamesh-aholic. I know this about myself. That's a little high, though. Let's go 64. No, not 8 resolution, 64. There we go. Okay. I think it's impossible for you to, yeah, leave your hands in your mouth, therefore you're not equipped to eat me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty cool use of it, basically making me part of a heavy mesh insert. Yeah. Let's see. I used to think that there was a shortcut to anatomy, and I learned that just to learn anatomy, just practice. There's no way around it. Exactly. Yeah, you just have to practice. Absolutely. The best advice I can give you, or give anybody really, when it comes to anatomy, is do yourself a favor, and if you can, invest in an écrochet of some kind. I have quite a few écrochets. I have some from Raphael Grassetti. I have some from Anatomy Tools. I also have the Anatomy for Sculptors book. Definitely worth the investment. So if you don't have that one, definitely pick that up. It's going to help you a lot. But ZBrush is the tool in order to make the thing that you need. But ZBrush itself is going to not necessarily give you too much anatomy knowledge. However, ... pause for effect, there is something you can learn right now. If you open up the Lightbox and go to Tool, and you come here to Ryan Kingsland Anatomy Écrochet, this ships with every version of ZBrush. Here you go. Let's hit solo for a second. Gives you a full skeleton. And then as you go through, there's actually a ton of different muscle groups that are also named. So there's your deltoid, gluteus maximus, the adductor magnus, right? These things exist right in here, and you can tell what the name is. This is a really good reference if you don't have an écrochet. It actually has one inside of ZBrush. Even 2022 has it as well. So this ships fully with ZBrush, as well as like the ability to have the naming convention. So where's your brachialis? Where's that? There it is. It's right there in that part. All these different tools exist. So yeah, and also too, they have some forensic dots on the face. This is something that they use a lot in the forensic field. So they have these as well. So you can really get a sense of like how the mouth muscle is in itself and what is that called, you know. So all that good stuff. Eyes are just called eyes, but if you want to learn, it is right here. So again, that's comma key, Lightbox, go to the tool menu, and it's right there. So that's super helpful. Yeah, exactly. Anatomy for Sculptors is great. I also think, let's see here. I think I might have missed something. Freedom of Sculpting is one I watched recently. Why do they use Decimate instead of Dynamesh? Decimate is just to reduce the polygon count to then get it into another program, or to just reduce the size overall. It's really good for like 3D printing and stuff. It was for the raptor legs or something, if I remember correctly. So I think that Sculptures is incredible. Yeah, Sculptures is super powerful. Because Dynamesh has tendency to smooth out details and retain the necessary details. Dynamesh resolution count will be much faster than decimated version. So just for performance. Yeah, Dynamesh is actually, like, Dynamesh is used for, you know, making sure that you're able to, like, sketch and sculpt at the same time. It's to help weld things together and produce a watertight mesh as well. Wrong button. So yeah, so decimating is more about polygon or vertice count reduction, where Dynamesh is more for like sculpting purposes. Speaking of which, I need to reload my Baby Cthulhu proportion thingy. So I need to come here to downloads, open this up. Let's get this back in here. It's because I've turned on and off my projects recently. Let's reduce that size down. There we go. So here, let's reduce this up. Okay, so we're going to kind of match this as close as possible. Now here with this head size, we're going to just kind of scale this guy up. Now, this head drawing here is not 100% symmetrical, so we're just kind of going for size at this point. That works. And then we can push this in. There we go. That's fine. Now these eyes are a little too high. So this is also important too. Now the eyes are too high. I can see that. So we need to move that down. There we go. Now, I'm doing a different type of character, so we're going to need to get some different shapes in there. But for right now, this is still, we can bring this about, kind of make this here. Time is it? It's already noon. So apologies if we haven't gotten really anything far, but we did answer a ton of questions, which is great. I do love answering questions, so hopefully this was helpful for you guys. That's actually why I changed the name of my stream to now AMA. So the Ask Me Anything part is hopefully helpful. It makes the stream seem a little bit more clear as to the direction of things. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. So let's just get these kind of eyes in place for a second. Okay. And then here, again, looking at the shape of this, let's actually get... So we're going to move a little quickly here. And so what I want to actually do is I want to get those ears in there. He has like these kind of like winged ears a little bit. So there's actually a brush we can use, and we can call on Mesh Extrude. And if I do anything outside of the mesh, it's only going to act like a mask. But in this case here, what I want to do is actually start drawing from the actual mesh itself. And then I'm going to just come in and kind of make these ears and do something like this. Now notice that this is actually really skinny. It's not really anything super powerful. That's because the intensity is a little bit lower. So I'm going to start again, come through, draw my shape, let go. Now the intensity is a little bit better. Now, this is masked off. We can always change this so we can break this apart. So here we can just come in and say, like, again, split, unmasked points. Come in here and call this ears for now, and then we can call this the head. I like to move the body down a bit. And then on the ear side of things, we can just give it some thickness and then reposition that wherever we want that. And of course, we don't want the ears straight back. Ears are gonna kind of arch back a little bit. There we go. Say something like that. Now let's go ahead and get some, like, I want to see some simple tentacle shapes in here first and foremost. So let's come in here, just hit save. You learn so much from these streams, even from questions I thought I knew. Oh, that's awesome, man. Chibi Sub-Zero, I love it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Non's definitely. I have a couple kids myself, yeah. Hey, what's happening? Lola, how you doing? M3DM Tavern, wishing you well and cheering you on. Thank you so much. Everybody, hi. Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. Everybody say hi to Aloha. I'll tell the M3D Tavern hi back. Just getting our stream on. Okay, let's do. So you see these tentacle looking things. I want to be able to make a brush that's going to give me these as I need them, right? So let's focus on making that real quick. So what we're going to do is, of course, hit save. Now this is where we're going to pull up just a simple curve brush. So I like to start with getting there most of the way. So if I say, let's go with hit C for curve, and then go with curve tube. If I start drawing this stuff out, boom, we have a curve. And that's gonna be good. That's what I want that to be. But I want it to actually give me a kind of tentacle shape, and I'm not getting that right now. So let's come up here to our stroke and dock this menu over here on the right-hand side. And we're gonna focus on a few things. First thing we're going to focus on, of course, is going to our curve modifiers, and notice that intensity is turned on but size is turned off. And so if I turn on size and readjust this, Now we get that kind of curved shape that's going for, right? But it's going in the wrong direction. If I draw this out, it's going to be this, and that's not what I want that to be. So I need to open up this grid, which is called the curve fall off, which is usually closed down. So let's open that up. And then from here, we actually can just flip the V or the H. We can flip whichever we would like to. Can it reset if you mess up? Just hit flip V. Now if I click this one time, now it's in the proper direction. But now it's coming straight to a point. It's going from thick to super thin. And tentacles usually have a rounded edge on top. So it's like, or by the tail end, it's rounded a little bit. Little Big Planet Sackboy. Oh my gosh. That is such a cool throwback, Scarlet Void. I love that game. That game is awesome. Oh, awesome stream, dude. Thanks, man. Yeah, as long as you guys enjoy the stream, that's all that matters. So I'm going to go ahead and move this point up a little bit. And now if I click this, you can see here that it's actually now getting thicker at the end of that. And I do want to add another little point to give it even more thickness. And so now I can kind of like find a happy medium of how I want this to be. Maybe I want this to be really thick at the top, but then I want a quick fall off. See, so I can do something like that. But that's too much. So I want something maybe a little bit more like this. And you can just play and get different effects, however you need that to be. And then when you're satisfied with this, right, now we can just go ahead and draw out a bunch. So now I can just get rid of this one, Control Z. And now I can actually come here, maybe, boom, draw this out. Now I have symmetry turned on, so maybe that's what's going on. Yep, I have symmetry turned on. So I'm going to close this stroke menu down. Okay, I'm going to make my one stroke, and then I'm going to go ahead and split unmasked points. And I'm going to set this kind of in the middle. Say something like this. There we go. Now I want to turn symmetry on. Now what I also can do as well, I turn symmetry on, and the geometry of this is not that great. Like, it's not the best. So we definitely can clean this up a bit. We can go here to do like a mirror and weld if we would like. And with symmetry turned on, we can actually ZBrush this and maybe give it like 1,000. Let's give it 2,000 polys. Keep groups down to 0. There we go. That's a little bit better. There we go. And now I can have this guy right here, which gives me some cleaner topology and makes things a little bit easier to work with. And now if I wanted to, I can just turn around and create this as an insert brush. And now I can drag out a few extras. I can start placing these as I want them to be. There we go. And then control drag. Maybe rotate that out a little bit. There we go. Now we're getting a little bit more of that Cthulhu vibe. And we can start placing this as needed. There we go. So this will give us our base. Is there no way to see curve modifier in live? You mean can see it live? As you're drawing out your curve, let's go back here to the curve tube. So when you draw it out, you do kind of see it, if that's what you mean, you do see it live. But yeah, you have to tap it to change. You have to tap it to see the changes. So no, like, okay, so your question, no, you can't see it live as you're making your changes. You have to make your change, and then you have to tap it to see the change occur, because it considers it a stroke. So that's the only difference. But once the change is made, then you're good to go. So in this case, if you want to set it to say something like that, then it will change that curve for you. The one thing I would recommend knowing is how to get rid of these points. Let's say you add too many points to it. So let's come over here, we add this here. let's say you add too many points and you're just like, I just want to remove a point or two. If you go ahead and click the point itself and move out into empty space and let go, it will delete that point. Pressing and holding Alt and tapping will not do anything. Right, it's not going to do anything. So we reset that, flip this, boom, boom. But one of the things you can do is, let's say you want to add a sharp transition instead of a soft transition. You grab that point, come out in space, come back, and now you have like a very sharp transition. Do that one more time and it returns it to a softer transition. You can also tile the effect if you needed to, so you can have something a little bit more like this, where it's like you like that kind of thick to thin, thick to thin. So you can easily tile that and then update that and get something a little bit more like specific beads or whatnot. So if I come back here and say like, okay, well, I need this to come up like this in this transition. Now I tile this back, hit this, and now I kind of have more like a beaded necklace or something like that, because now it's making that transitional change. So it's very powerful, but yeah, there's no like live update to that. So if you ever needed to make a quick necklace, then that's something that you can ultimately end up doing, right? You can actually come here. Let's just reset that, flip that. So let's say I'm gonna come here to this poly, right? And we want to wrap something around and make a necklace. So let's draw this out, press and hold shift, and now we have something like this, right? This in itself, like we want this to be consistent. So yeah, we'd come in here and maybe say like, you know what, let's have this look pretty straight. Okay, great. Let's add a point here and here, and let's have this point come down. But let's actually make this a sharp transition from here to here. And if I touch this, then that's going to give me that. But now if I tile it even more, it should give me a little bit different result. So if I come through, why isn't it giving me? Oh, maybe because it's not that fancy. Oh, I know why. It's my design. Let's hit reset. Let's flip here. We want this to kind of go like this. We want the tile to give us the effect. So let's do this half here. There we go, something like that. Now we tile that a bunch. There we go. And now that's going to give us a much different result. So you can get some pretty cool stuff with it, or you can just get blobs like what I'm showing you, and then it's not as cool. But hopefully that's helpful. And then at any point in time, just go back and just like reset that if you need to. Yeah, this. Yeah, great one for empty point. Yeah, not a problem. All right. Cool. Well, time is flying by. Okay, so let's do us ourselves a favor and let's kind of finish at least cleaning this mesh up a little bit. Let's get a hand in there because, you know, hands are important. Okay, so let's actually get his arms in. Let's turn on this guy. And then I showed this earlier, but I don't think I actually did it for this one. Is that we want to kind of get this at least rough idea on this. Let's actually drop down the opacity. Let's go up to movie, timeline, show, and let's click this point here so we can always come back to that. There we go. Something like this. Okay. Let's grab this guy, and then let's grab the move brush, and let's pull out his shoulders a little bit. So now, even though we're making kind of we're making a chibi style, you know, baby Cthulhu, we still want some of the anatomy portions to be correctly. So we want to make sure that we're at least bringing in the right shapes, but we also are understanding that, like, when the arm connection point itself, right? So something like the damn standard to carve in where the chest muscles, the pec muscles would be, right? And then knowing where the lats would be. So I tend to like go a little extreme personally with this, where I'll just get those areas blocked in it's kind of like more the way I think than anything else. So we're going to turn Dynamesh on, and we're going to weld this stuff together, kind of smooth this down. So that way I can make these changes. But here, you know, everybody has like an armpit. So again, it's a chibi character, but we still want to pay attention to some rules of anatomy. And so I will kind of manually come in and sculpt in these parts a little bit to the extreme, and then we'll clean them up a little bit. So kind of just see how things are. He's really caked up back here. All right, we got a spinal cord, so I want to come down the middle. I like to real anatomy, the way the actual the back is arched is kind of more like a W. So you're looking for this shape here. If we clear this out and then pick a pen, you're looking for kind of a W shape. And what that means is like right here is where you have your shoulder blades. Right? That's where that will be. Don't mind my writing. And then, you know, and then you have your spine here, right? So we want to kind of create this W shape effect as we're sculpting a bit. And that will kind of help things out, so you get this nice shape. And again, if we look at, where was that écrochet? If we look at the écrochet here, and we kind of look at the back a bit, let's come here. Let's just focus like this area. Like you'll see, like there's going to be a high spot right about here. Might be a little hard to see, but it's kind of the same thing. It's coming in like this. Comes in here, then comes up, comes over, and then comes up. So you get this kind of W shape that happens, because right here is your shoulder blades. So that's what we're looking for, just at a very smaller scale. So I'm getting something like this. Are you coming all Wednesday in stream for ZBrush, or is it random? Want to put an alarm up? Oh, perfect. So a lot of times we actually have a calendar for this. I don't stream every Wednesday because I do travel for work. I do a lot of events. Like if you're going to be at SIGGRAPH, I will also be at SIGGRAPH. But we do have a calendar where you can see not only when I go live, but also when other artists go live as well. I'll drop the link in the chat. But here, like you'll see, like, okay, so today we have we have Oscar Trejo coming in, and then Thursday we have Shane Olson, Saturday, and I will be on this list as well. So I need to change the name of my stream. I just did a name change on that. So this is where it will be. My old stream titles used to be Come See How It's Made, but we're changing the name of that. So I'm going to need to change that in the calendar as well. But yeah, that's now where we're at. So that will help you out. Usually it's going to be when I am on Wednesdays, it's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time or Los Angeles time. How can you remove the custom insert brush from the menu? It can get crowded fast. Yes, absolutely. So what I recommend to do is actually just come over here. First off, save your brushes. Whatever brush you've made, make sure you save that. So select that brush and then save it. That's super key. But when you're all said and done, just hit reset all brushes. And that should clear the brushes. There you go. It cleared those extra brushes because it's not in the actual brush menu that is under in the program file. So when you hit reset all brushes, it's going to reset every single brush back to its original function, which includes stroke types, which includes color. Everything gets stored back in. So then just make sure that you're aware of that. So if you were using, let's say, like Dynamesh and not Dynamesh, you're using the damn standard, you made some critical changes. Resetting all brushes will make those changes go back to normal, and you just have to reset those. So just FYI. Anyway, but yeah, that's how you do it. Previously you said that we don't want triangles. That's because this is a subdividing model. I'm new to this world and still get confused with different pipelines. Absolutely, that's a great question, especially if you're getting new to this. So yes, previously I mentioned that you don't want a lot of triangles when you're sculpting, because it doesn't subdivide well and it doesn't deform well, which is great. You don't want triangles if you can help it. In a production pipeline like animation or games, they will avoid n-gons and triangles as much as possible because they don't deform well. But that being said, there are times in which sometimes it might be a little impossible to, avoid a triangle. So the key rule of thumb for triangles is put them in an area that doesn't deform. So like earlier I mentioned back of the hand, that's like a good place to put them. You want to avoid them at all costs if possible, but note that in a perfect world, that's the key. But where triangles would be okay is non-deforming meshes. So like a cup, for example, like this ceramic Deadpool cup. Well, if this whole thing was made of triangles, it's, that you don't want that. It doesn't look good on your portfolio because you're not going to get clean UVs. It's not going to unwrap correctly. Things are going to be a little funky with it, so it's not going to be its best. But if it was all triangles at the end of the day, it's not really going to hurt anything if it looks good. But the rule of thumb is avoid triangles when possible. Do not just throw a bunch of triangles in there. It's not going to look good. And if you're trying to get work, then you're going to want to kind of, make sure that you have nice, clean practices, regardless of, what game asset you downloaded and said, look, it's full of triangles. In engines, things get triangulated at the end of the day. So, you're gonna see some of the work in game engines look triangulated. But when you're sculpting, edge flow is key for good sculpting experience, but also for things like UV unwrapping, texturing, painting, all that good stuff. So just try to avoid triangles where you can, unless you want me to come rant at you and then tell you all the things done wrong. It's just a good rule of thumb. That's really, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say. So, okay, so even though this character is not going to be so anatomically correct with everything, just note that what I'm doing is just I am placing these blockouts for myself. This helps me make sure that things are correct and are positioning in the proper way. So this is kind of this is just kind of how I choose to do things. Everybody's different. You can block things out 100% to true block out and then merge it all together, or you can just get the basic shapes in. Whatever works best for you. Chibi characters aren't too super detailed all the time, but that's okay. We go for what we want. My style is kind of a little bit more of I do kind of like a stylized, somewhat texture realistic mashup, I guess is what I do. Here's my knee ditch here in the back. And then two, here's something to think about. Here's an anatomy tip. And actually, hold on. I have something. Okay. So it might be a little hard to see, but I have this écorché that was done by Anatomy Tools. And something, a little cheat for you guys. It's not 100% one-to-one, but it's something to remember. It might be hard to see on my screen, so I apologize. But here's the arm, right? I want you guys to think of the bicep. Sorry, the bicep of the arm is kind of like the hamstring, and the tricep is kind of like the quads. And then the forearm front, where it connects into the bicep here, is kind of like the calf area, and then the front of it's kind of like the shin. It's very similar with a few different changes, like triceps 3 muscles, quad is 4, etc., etc. But if you're looking at the quad muscles, and then you're looking at the back of the leg with the knee ditch, all that's super important. even when you're doing like fun little characters. So kind of think of like the legs as an extension of the arm. That was my whole rant there. But it's like it's very similar. And that will hopefully help you just out a bit. So the way these things connect have similar shapes to it. So like the way this bicep comes in. So here, I'm just going to go ahead and merge this stuff together. So I'm going to say Dynamesh this. There you go. There we go. Say something like that. Then move this down. And so I'm going to get some similar shapes here. So in the back of the leg, while there's differences, bicep equals 2, right? And the hamstrings have something very similar to it. So the way these things connect, I like to draw these lines in here. It's just helpful for me. I kind of just place things as I need it. And then I do the same thing here. So just a little thought process. Okay, let's get some hands in here real fast. And then we need some feet. So I'm going to insert a sphere. Yeah, not a problem. You're absolutely welcome. Have to trash my brain into League of L. Nice stream as usual. Thanks a lot for all the info. Have a good day. Night, and see you all. Nons, thank you for stopping by. It's super awesome. Is it possible to customize spacebar shortcut to something else in future updates? That's a great question, and I don't know. It's definitely something that I can always bring it up. But yeah, it's typically defaulted to 2 specific menus. One is for this menu, and then the second is for ZModeler. But I don't know. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Absolutely. Since 5-star polls are almost unavoidable, won't it affect subdivisions? So 5-star polls are fine. It's just you don't want as many. You don't want a bunch of them. You want them in very necessary positions. But, you know, they're almost unavoidable, yeah, because of the way the edge flow is. So just have them in places that make sense. Have them in super purposeful places. Not just to have them. Like a good example, like on this mesh, if we come back in time, we have a couple here. We have one right here, and they do have one right here, and then they have some down here. These areas aren't going to be problematic. There's one here, that's okay. Again, notice where these are. They're actually in very specific spots. You just don't want them like literally right here on this arm. But here is fine, because again, it's going to subdivide fine. What doesn't subdivide well is when you got like a bunch of n-gons floating around where it's like more than 5 or 6 pointed star. It's now getting into like the ridiculous amount of like 7 to 20 where it's like they're all connected. But poles are okay in the right space. It's more triangles and n-gons that give you the real problems. Okay, hands. That's what we were doing. Great question, by the way. Yeah, no, it's important. Okay. We're just going to get like a basic shape here real fast. So I'm just going to take the move, and I like to look at my own hand for reference. Although, fun fact, and if you guys might find this super fun, but my early sculptures, I used to get critiqued on my thumbs all the time. It might be hard to see, but look at my thumb. I call it the Megan Fox thumb because she has it too. But it's a little stubby thumb, and I have them on each thumb. Both of my thumbs are stubby. So the best advice I got when it came to like hand sculpture is like, oh, make sure that you're referencing your own hand. And then I would get critiqued all the time on how my my thumbs always looked weird. They're like, your thumbs are all short. They're too short. Make them longer. And I'm like, and I was like, okay, I could do that. And then finally, I think it was Shane Olsen. I think he called it out one time. I can't remember. But finally, somebody asked me, they were like, hey, why is your thumbs always like, why are they always like this? And then I showed them my hand, and then they just started laughing because they're like, that makes total sense. They're like, got it. This now it all tracks. So, you know, sometimes we just have, you know, little things about us that make us different. Yeah, it also depends on what surface, shiny metal, plastic, or unforgiving bad geo. Got bumpy leather, you might never unsee. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, yeah. Okay. Get a base little triangle shape here for that thumb connection. And then we're going to go ahead and come here. Let's go ahead and get what I call the hand butt. Bring this in. And then control, duplicate this. Gonna elongate this a little bit. Scale this up. There we go. Get the move infinite to stretch this around. So there's always a nice pad at the base of your hand. Now notice I primarily sculpt a left-handed mesh because I'm right-handed, so I'm always looking at my left hand for reference. And then let's go back here, and then again we're just going with like something simple enough. Let's get a different poly group. There we go. Grab that guy. So rule of thumb with fingers. All right, you want your fingers to actually, like your middle finger is the same length as your palm. If you measure your middle finger and then take that space, it's pretty much the same length as your palm. And we're doing a chibi character, so this rule will not apply. But usually on a fully proportional human, from the top of your middle finger to the bottom of your palm is the size of your face. Just a little fun fact. So when in doubt, kind of make this at least roughly the same size. You can always adjust later. There we go. And make that a little thicker. I'm going to control. Actually, let's back this up. We'll scale this down just a little bit, but we'll shrink that down, but make that. There we go. Say something like this. Auto groups. There we go. It's fine. I have just started learning ZBrush. Wanted to do more advanced hard surface, but don't know where to start as it's really different UI than other 3D softwares. Any suggestion? Yeah, I am Kira. I can show you some getting started stuff with ZModeler. Absolutely. I am going to have a dedicated future stream. I want to say July 18th. Let me check my calendar real fast. Actually, I can just answer that. There's going to be a live dedicated stream on ZBrush. Oops. Go back. Go back. Oh, can't go back. Okay, that's fine. If we come here to the Maxon ZBrush channel, there's going to be a live stream specifically for this. I did this once before, and actually I can show you that video as well. I'm going to be doing this for the iPad, but the same things will apply for ZBrush Desktop. But there is going to be a live stream for lightsabers on that. Now, if I go to Maxon ZBrush lightsaber Ian Robinson, if I could type my own name correctly, there was here we go. There's a couple streams that I did where we made an actual lightsaber inside of ZBrush Desktop. So here's this one for you. And also I did a commander's helmet here as well, where it's very specific for, and all this is like Z modeler stuff. So, yep. That will help you a lot with it. But as far as like hard surface stuff goes, here real quick, let me finish this hand and then I can actually show you some really cool quick little tips. So here I'm going to just come through auto groups real fast, get rid of this one. I don't need this guy. Actually, I'm not going to get rid of that. Yeah, I'll get rid of it. Brain dead. Let's go. Boom, 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 boom. Let's grab this one, and then let's just put this here. Kind of insert that like such. That's fine. Just kind of place this where we need that to be. That's fine. Okay, this is a very quick block out hand. We can go ahead and, we can go ahead and fix this up when we need to. Let's do it on his left-hand side. And then let me show you some Z modeler stuff that we'll be covering in that stream specifically. But hopefully this will get you started a little bit. All right, this is a very rough block out of a hand, so don't judge it too hard. Okay. There we go. Let's hit save. All right, so Z modeler stuff real fast. So here, well, not real fast. We can take our time. Honestly, like, I love answering the questions more sometimes than actually doing the project, but I also like doing the project. Okay, so here we have our basic cylinder, and hard surface in ZBrush is consistent of a couple things. One, it's consistent of the brush Z modeler, which what makes ZBrush different than any other application for 3D is that normally in, say, something like Cinema 4D or even in Maya, you have your faces, your edge loops, or your vertices are different modes, and you have to activate one mode and then change it to, then change to another mode, and you're kind of moving back and forth, right? But in ZBrush, all of those things are active at the same time. So with Z Modeler, basically, if I hover over a face, an edge, or a point, and I press and hold the space bar, I'm going to get a Z Modeler menu. And while this menu has a lot of things that you might be like, oh my God, this is crazy. I want you to look at this menu as order of operation. So first thing is, what are we targeting? Well, we are definitely, or rather, what are we affecting? We are affecting the polygon actions. So I'm hovering over a polygon or a face. So that's what I'm doing. If I was hovered over edge loops, it would say edge actions. If I was hovering over a point actions. So first off, what are we affecting? We're affecting a face. Second thing is, what do we actually want to do? While there's a lot of options here, the most common ones are, say, something like extrude, Q mesh, which is a little bit different than normal extrude, insert, maybe a polygroup, maybe delete, maybe crease, but those are for different things. So basically it's like those are the common ones, right? And then once we say like, oh, we want to extrude something. Now, what am I affecting? Right now, it's set to a single poly, meaning that if I just grab one poly, it's going to extrude that out. If I grab another poly, it's going to extrude that out. And it's going to literally ignore the poly groups because it's just one poly at a time. But what if I want to affect multiple polys that are the same color? Well, if I hover back over that face and say, well, polygroup all, which is the most common thing people pick, now I'm going to be affecting more of those points at the same time. Right? And so I can actually turn around and affect multiple polygroups simultaneously. And then, and then at the end of the target, it's like, well, do we have any modifiers that we're doing? So say something like, if we hover over an edge and we want to insert an edge loop, we hover over the edge, we can just click and drag, notice I'm like holding the left click or I'm holding the drag, and that's actually, you know, allowing me to drag that to a specific spot. But I could also come over and say, well, I do want to insert an edge loop, but I want multiple edge loops now. So now I can say, well, here's my target. And now I'm affecting multiple edge loops at the same time. And so this is going to be extremely helpful. Now, what makes ZModeler so powerful is, let's do ourselves a favor. And this is a little trick I do when I start doing something like, let's make a bowl together. Like this will be like, hey, we're going to make a bowl. Here, I'm going to go to edge loop and say delete loops. This is going to delete non-essential edge loops. Although it says non-essential, it's supposed to say non-essential. That's really funny. So if I hit delete non-essential edge loops, it's going to delete all the edge loops that don't make up the shape, and they're just there to be there. And in this case, you don't really need that. So here I'm going to say delete non-essential edge loops. Now this is what makes ZBrush so powerful, is that I can drag out a bunch of edge loops and say, yeah, that's great. I have this many edge loops, but I want the same amount of edge loops on the top. I can literally just touch one time and it will repeat that exact stroke in that area, giving you the ability to have the same count or the same effect on different sides of it. So it's really helpful that way. Hey, what's up, Henry Shabanka? Dude, Henry, everybody should say hi to Henry real quick, because Henry is like king of ZBrush hard surface. Like, everybody got to check his work out. So good. Actually, we're going to have a special stream with Henry and Paul Gabriel coming up very soon. So if you guys are not going to want to miss that. Actually, I think it's scheduled. Let me see. Let's see if I go to live. Yep, right here. Actually, it's going to be on the 18th. So after my hard surface stream, you're going to have Henry, and he's going to have with Paul Gabriel, and he's going to do some really cool stuff. Also, hi, Henry. How you doing, bud? Okay. So this is like 101 breakdown of ZBrush, like hard surface. Now, let's go one step further. The way I like to teach hard surface is I want you to know that like ZModeler is the way to make good changes for a lot of things. But something that a lot of people don't really utilize, in my opinion, and I'm trying to get a lot of people more eyes on it, is actually using the gizmo to help make things like a good shape for you. So let's say we wanted to make that bowl, for example. While I deleted my edge loops, you all saw earlier that I can control drag and make different shapes, right? I can control duplicate with any shape that has 0 subdivisions. Well, I can also do that if the geometry is closed, right? Meaning it's watertight. I can actually do that with an edge loop, and I can give myself multiple edge loops. So if I wanted to make a bowl, I can say like, okay, here's one edge loop here. I'm going to widen this out. I'm going to extrude this part up here. Okay, I'm going to extrude one more spot, just hitting Control Duplicate, and maybe make this a little bit wider. And then here. All right, so this is going to be my main base bowl shape. Now, polygroups is going to be your best friend. So you're going to want to know to come to the tool menu on the right-hand side, go to polygroups, and say group by normals. And what that's going to do is by default, any plane change or any normal change that's at least a 45-degree angle or greater is going to get a different polygroup. You can adjust this to be 25, 64, whatever, but 45 is usually pretty good. And this will give you different polygroups, which means now you can affect things differently. So maybe I don't want this edge here, so I can press and hold Alt, and I can delete that, get rid of that. But maybe I want to have this kind of cave in a little bit. So I can hover over the multiple edge loop, and I can go to my multiple edge loop tools, multi-edge loops, and now I can modify this. I know that this is going to give me multiple edge loops here, but I actually want to change the shape. So I can now go to interactive elevation. And so I can actually go in to the left or out to the right, and I can give myself more by going up and down, more edge loops up and down, and changing the shape going from right to left. So right to left changes the shape, up and down changes the actual resolution, giving you more edge loops that support that. And so now this can give me my base shape here. Now, again, the polygon actions are super important, right? Or polygroups rather. So here I can just, with my gizmo, make a base shape, use my Z modeler to turn that around. Now let's say I don't want this poly group on top because I want this to be open. I want it to be a bowl. It needs to be open. So I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what? I'm just going to do Control Shift, tap this poly group, Control Shift drag to invert that. And I'm just going to say, you know what? Let's go ahead and just delete hidden. So we're going to go up to our geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. And now here, this is where we can make some cool changes. I can actually hit Control W to then do all of the same color poly group. And now I can hover over an edge and say, let's actually Q mesh this. Sorry, hover over a face, go to Q mesh all poly groups. And now I can like extrude this out and give me some thickness. And now I have some thickness here, which is perfect. And this will definitely get me something a little bit more closer to what I'm looking for. And let's say I don't want this step here in the middle of this bowl. I want to get rid of this step and have that fully rounded. That's okay. We're just going to go to poly groups and we're going to go to group by normals. We're going to hover over this. Now, this is the difference between Q mesh and extrude. Q mesh, and I'll show you on the edge here first. Q mesh, sorry, let's start with extrude. Extrude will actually, and we'll do this to a single poly. Extrude will just extrude one thing out. But what if I have something that I need to snap to exactly to the next point? Well, what extrude is going to do is it's literally going to ignore this other poly group, giving me another closed watertight like extrusion. So I'm actually going to have multiple vertices or multiple faces kind of touching each other with this extrusion. So this isn't watertight, you know, to these 2 points. They're not connected, if that makes sense. But with Q mesh, what Q mesh will do, and we'll just do a single poly, is I drag this out, is it will find the supporting edge loop and it will connect and weld itself to that point. So if I drag this out and I start dragging this out, boom, it's going to connect to that point. And that's going to give me a watertight mesh. It's going to really make things clean. So here, I can actually do this. I can drag this up. I can go affect all poly groups, and then I can bring that up into the middle and then have that connect, which literally gets rid of that step, which gives me some thickness. So now my internal geometry looks like this, and my external looks like this. And of course, I can just identify that as a single poly group if I wanted to. Maybe I do want to add a little bit of extra edge loops just so that it deforms nicely at the bottom. Say yes. And there you go. We just built our first bowl together. Now, where it makes polygroups really, and I'm kind of tangenting, so apologize, guys. But what really makes polygroups really helpful is that we also, for hard surface, have extensive creasing options. So if we go under geometry and go to crease, we can actually use our polygroups and say crease polygroups. And now what this will do is if I divide this, here's without creases. So I'm going to uncrease that. And I'm just going to divide a few times. There you go. I'm going to hit Control Shift. Oh, sorry, I'm going to hit, wow, Shift Control, my brain. I'm going to hit Shift Control to stamp that. Now I'm going to go back in time. I'm going to hit Crease Polygroups, and now I'm going to divide this. And now you can see the difference, right? I'm now getting a nice, sharp, clean edge all the way around, and that's giving me a really good, clean look. But wait, there's more. One of the things that I can do with crease edges is say how much I want it to crease. There's a sharp edge in the real world is not good, right? Everything has some sort of roundness, some sort of beveling to it, unless it's a knife, and then it should be sharp. But in this case, we want nice, natural fall-offs, and we can occur that with our creasing by coming to crease options and saying, hey, everything at a 45-degree angle, which is right here, crease tolerance, I want you to, at subdivision level 2, start giving me a softer crease. So now where I do have a crease, if I start subdividing, and you'll see it right here, divide once, divide twice, we're at subdivision level 2, so good. Divide 3, 4. Now it starts giving me a nice soft fall off, which looks a lot more natural and a little bit more friendly to what we're going for. And so now at a subdivided bowl, I actually have creasing with nice fall off geometry. So this is like the introduction to hard surface, and it's really simple to like, once you get your head around like using ZModeler, using the gizmo, and just understanding a few things, you can start to create a lot of really cool stuff. So hopefully that was helpful. Let's see here. Yeah, I went on a tangent. Sorry, visual. I'll check your question here in a second. Let me go back up for a minute. And can you make a video going over how to use noise plugin with surface noise? It's hard to understand all the sliders. Yeah, actually, we might have something, but I can also cover that here today because we have a few minutes, so we could do that and one more question, I think. Not a problem. I am Kira, or I am Kira. Not a problem. Hey, that 1 3D artist, how you doing? Okay, yeah, we have a few more minutes, so we can answer a few more questions. I've been using ZBrush for a while already, but recently I've seen that Blender has gotten a lot of strength, and I'm considering starting again. Would you say ZBrush is more powerful or better? So this is my honest answer. This is not a Maxon Ian answer. This is not a ZBrush trainer Ian answer. This is a legitimate answer by Ian the artist. So yes, Blender has sculpting, and sculpting capabilities are actually quite good. However, ZBrush's strength is literally we are the industry standard, and we also specialize in high fidelity sculpting. What separates us from Blender is the fact that ZBrush specializes in sculpting. We are the best at it because it's literally the one-stop shop for all your sculpting needs. Blender is kind of like a one-stop shop. It's more of like a Swiss Army knife. If you're going through a forest and you need to cut down some trees, you may want a machete. That's kind of what ZBrush is. It's a specialty tool designed to do something very specific, whereas Blender is more of a one-stop shop to do the stuff that you would need to do there. But I can say this with full certainty. I use Cinema 4D quite a lot because there are just things that I can do really quickly in there. And then but with ZBrush handles all of my sculpting needs. And I sculpt from stylized all the way to high fidelity and everything in between. So it's a standard for a reason because we're the best at it, and our goal is to constantly be improving the software. We've been doing a lot of under the hood improvements as of late, so but we still have released a lot of features, and if you guys want to see what features have been released, then we have a bunch of those updates and our on our YouTube channel and stuff. So yeah, so it really is really the best at sculpting because that's what we're designing for it to be. Thank you for going on a tangent. That was helpful. Ron Swanson's mustache, absolutely. Also, I love the name. Yeah, so hopefully that's helpful for you. So I would say, look, if you already have ZBrush, all right, even 2022, if you have ZBrush 2022 or you have ZBrush, literally ZBrush 2022, in my opinion, is going to be way better for you to learn sculpting. You don't need to learn another application if you already have that. If you have ZBrush for iPad, the sculpting in there is fantastic. That's you're learning a new UI at that point, but ZBrush is the best at it. So if your goal is to get into digital sculpting, even as a hobby to pure professional seriousness, ZBrush is going to be the way you want to go. Did you show up at the end, that 1:30 artist? The attack, you kind of did, yeah. I started at 10 LA time, so that's noon for you. Will there be any updates to the UV system in ZBrush? I'm making IMMs with UVs, but they break when I drag them out. Also real-time rendering. Okay, so your UVs break with IMMs because you're using your IMM brush on a model that doesn't have UVs. They should support it. And if it doesn't, then I will flag that because that is actually, that's how it's supposed to work. So here, if I have this bowl model, and then I'm just going to come in here real quick. By the way, one of the features we've done in 2025, and I'm going to show you guys right now, is actually utilizing creasing to do UV unwrap. So I'm going to click from here to here. So because I'm going to want to have these creases like this. And then I'm going to go through and let's actually do complete edge loop. Let's do this. It's on that loop right there. So I'm going to go here to here. And then here I'm going to go crease, complete edge loop. I'm going to do that like that. I'm going to do it like that. I'm going to go to UV. I'm going to go to create, and then I'm going to go with unwrap, and that should be down the middle. Yeah, symmetry turned on with creased edges, so I'm going to unwrap that. That should unwrap for me. There you go. There's my UVs using the creased option. And then you can always just go ahead and, clear all those UVs and then maybe go back and crease polygroups if you need to. Now, if you have this, and I'm going to create an insert mesh, I'm going to say new, and this should have UVs. So this mesh has UVs on it. Now, here, let's just do this. I'm going to come over to the UV. If I drag this out, notice that my UVs are kept. I still have the ability to keep my UVs. Boom, boom, boom. That's on there like that. But let's grab another mesh. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. I'm going to go with a cylinder. I'm going to go to UV and hit delete UVs. Now my IMM still has UVs, but now it's going to delete those UVs because your original mesh doesn't have any UVs on there. So if you want to keep the UVs with the IMM brush, you first need to have UVs on your mesh. And then as you drag it out, it'll keep UVs not only for your model, but also for your IMM brush. And in this case, it will stack because it's the exact same thing. But as long as your model has UVs at the start of it, your IMM brush will retain your UVs. So your IMM should actually have, should still have them there. It's just when you drag it out on a mesh that doesn't have it, it deletes. Shortest path between 2 points for which feature? For creasing? For creasing, it's actually under the point vertice. So if you go to point, Z modeler, you go to point, and then you point, go to crease, and then there's a shortest path there. I think that is also, yeah, that's just for the points, I think. Yeah, that's just for points. Yeah, it's just for points. Is it preset under UV master as well? For the unwrap creasing, no. For UV master is only doing polygroups. It's only doing polygroups or using existing seams, or your control painting. But for the creased edges approach, that's actually under the tool menu, UV map, and we reorganized this in 2024. I think it was 2023, 2024. We reorganized this menu and then we added creased edges and the ability to unwrap that way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, make a low poly model without subdivisions, make your UVs, create the IMM brush, and then just know dragging out that IMM brush on a model, that original model, needs to have UVs for the UVs to be recognized. Absolutely. You mean shortest point for masking right now? It's only for crease. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. Yes, that's correct. Okay, yeah. I can make a note, and no promises. I can never promise, but yeah, we can make a note. Okay, so last but not least, I did see one last question, and then we'll call it a day. So great questions, by the way, guys. And that was going back to our surface noise. I can cover surface noise real quick. So with surface noise is actually a lot of fun. And it's actually a great way. There's a few things that surface noise can do that most people aren't aware of. So let's cover the basics on that. Let me first get a sip of my coffee. And then realizing that I'm starving because I forgot to eat breakfast this morning. I woke up very tired. Okay, so first things first is we have our model here. We'll just continue this bowl. And I'm going to give this bowl some subdivisions because we're going to want the bowl itself to have some really nice subdivisions. The reason for that is because if you're not aware, ZBrush captures detail on the vertices, not on the faces and not on the edge loops. It captures it on the vertices. So wherever there's a vertice is where the detail is going to be kept. And for something like surface noise, that's fine. That's like super fine level vertices. sorry, to capture that detail, you need your vertices close together in order to capture that info. So here, as an example, I'll just show you real fast. If I were to have just no subdivisions and go into surface noise, which we'll cover in a second, and then give me a bunch of noise like this, the noise will show up, but if I say apply to mesh, it's just literally, there's nothing to capture. There's very little vertice count on that. So we're going to need to subdivide to give us some good information. So if I repeat that action just for show and tell, and then say apply to mesh, now that noise stays as soon as I apply it. Now I'm getting ahead of myself, so just kind of keeping that in the back of your mind. So with surface noise, first thing I want to do is come over to the tool menu, go to surface, and then you have noise. And really, ideally, there's a ton of information here, but the stuff that you really want to kind of focus on first and foremost is this button right here. It actually says 3D, and then next to that says UV, and then next to that says plugin. Let's ignore plugin. 3D, it's surface or noisemaker or surface noise. Basically, it's going to either use the normals of your 3D mesh or the UV map itself. And it's really what look you're going for. The best results will be if you got nice clean UVs, you're obviously going to get a lot better results because you have a very specific unwrap. But if you just need some like overall generic surface on, or like some noise breakup on your mesh, then this is going to be perfect for you. You could just keep it at 3D. And actually, there is a trick that they use in like Pixar and stuff like that, or DreamWorks. I saw this trick before. It was really cool. And I didn't really think to use surface noise this way. But let's say we have something like, I think the shiny plastic may not be super a good example of it. Let's use basic material. You see how shiny basic material is? When you apply a noise by opening this up and then saying just noise scale, which is your first slider, you hit OK, you actually get light breakup. And so this can make an object look a little bit less wet or a little bit more normal. You can always go back into surface noise by hitting edit and make any adjustments as long as you didn't apply it to the mesh. And this is how you can do your first slider. So the first slider is just the noise itself. And it's a generic noise that's driven down here at the bottom by this graph, very similar to the graph that we showcased for how to adjust our stroke intensity and the size of our stroke. Here's the same thing. You can literally start adding points and dragging points out, and you can get different noise effects based on this. So if we wanted something a little bit more like this, or maybe a little bit sharper, this noise down here is actually driving this type of look. And so if I hit reset, you can see it goes back to normal. If I just add a point and make that sharp, right, add a point, make that sharp, right, I can give it a little bit more of that kind of ceramic feel or that pitted kind of pocketed look. And so, and that will just go over all of the noise as evenly as possible. The cleaner your mesh, the cleaner the noise will be. So if you have nice controllable normals, that's really going to help out. And so you can have something like this. Now, there is a natural color blend. If you have color on your object or you want to apply color, you can apply color to this and you can have a color blend. I usually don't use the color at all because I just typically don't. It's a preference. But if you needed to add some sort of color, you absolutely can. So just know that your noise scale and this graph, they're connected, those two things. The next two sliders, magnify by mask, right? So that's going to really, if you have a mask on your mesh, so let's show you that. So I hit OK. And now I have these polygroups, right? So if I Control-Shift-Drag this outer one and I mask this off and I bring it back, notice that the noise is on the inside, but the mask is protecting the mesh and it's giving it no noise. If I reverse that, I now have masking on the inside and on the bottom, but I absolutely have no masking on the outside. So now that's actually protecting that altogether. So if I were to come back in here, right, we have a magnify by mask slider, which, you know, should give us a little bit of a different result if required. I typically don't mess with this one. It's usually set to 0 for me. But then I have my strength mask too. I have this down here. So if I adjust, if you notice nothing is happening here until I moved my strength by mask slider, that's because, again, it's going to affect the mask itself. So I had this at 100% default, which is why this didn't do anything. But as soon as I go to strength by mask, now I can start seeing a change, and now I can start seeing that direction. So I can actually get some masking or some effect done in the masking, and that can look a little bit different than what's going on the opposite side. So again, I typically don't mess with this because usually if I'm masking an area off, I don't want the noise there. But it's just good to know that that's where that does. And then strength by default is just how powerful this is going to be. This is going to be quite powerful as I push this in. One direction will do a negative or a actual cut. The other direction will do more of an additive. So if I zoom in here and I show negative, you can see it's kind of pitting that effect. And then if I go positive, it's kind of like now making kind of like a little shrubble or whatever to call that, little popcorn. So you get two different effects. You get a positive and a negative. Now you have a relative strength button here. If I turn this off, then this is going to just give it another algorithm based on the normals and the relative strength it thinks it needs based on the viewpoint. Turning this on is going to give you the best results as it's going to be the most powerful, but that's the way to kind of do that. And again, normal ZBrush navigation happens in the viewport. You do have some buttons here at the top. You can recenter, frame, zoom, or move with these. But normal navigation works just fine. So those are the main sliders down here at the bottom, or on the side. At the bottom, if you're not driving an alpha, currently, if you were to drive an alpha, none of these would actually work because you can't rotate, move, or position the alpha. The alpha would be driven specifically as such. But here with the surface noise, I can actually change and rotate the angle based on the XYZ, the offset of things on the each axis, and even the scale on each axis. And of course, like I showed earlier, you can actually tile a lot of this stuff as well, right? So you can get some tiling, and then you can adjust the rotation and get some really cool effects. Either way, you can reset all of this if you push things too far, so I definitely encourage you to play with it. You're able to actually save out your different noises. If you make a custom noise and you really love it, you can save it. You can even copy it and place it on another subtool with surface noise. And then you also have the ability to, like I said, switch to UVs. So if I switch to UVs, now we're getting a really cool pattern on the UV shape itself. So we're to say, okay, now that pitted pattern turned into this nice kind of little cool thing because now it's following the UV map instead of following just the normal surface. Now we do have some plugins. If you come to Surface Noise and say Lightbox Noise Maker, we have some presets that you could just literally like, well, what am I looking for? Oh, I wanted this to have like a honeycomb shape. So I can double click the honeycomb. Now notice you're getting some warping here. This is looking very not so good. That's because if we open this up, it defaulted back to the 3D look. If I hit UVs, now it's going to go ahead and give me the UV version. Now from here, you have a new sliders that opened. You have alpha scale, and you have mixed noise and strength that occurred. So these new sliders opened up. And so here I can actually adjust the alpha size. And I am getting some color information. So again, I could turn this to 0 if I wanted to, but here, let's just keep the color. So I can actually adjust the scale of this because now it's repeating that texture, and I can adjust the noise. So I can come in and get a little bit more of a negative honeycomb effect, say something like that. And now this is my bowl with the surface noise. And now see here, we're getting, it's, you know, the UV that we created, it's not perfect and it's not super clean. So we're getting a little bit of a seam here. That's okay, it happens. But nonetheless, you know, this is something that ultimately, you know, we could fix with proper UVs, but just to demonstrate what's going on. And then if we go back into edit, the other thing we do besides those presets is we actually can go into Surface Noise plugin. And in Surface Noise plugin, we have a bunch of different surface noises. You can actually make your own scales, and you can move this to the side, and you can adjust the rotation of these things. You can adjust the scaling of it. The scale factor can be pushed up manually this way, also in X, Y, and Z. If you wanted a gradient instead, again, or you wanted a cheetah pattern, or you wanted some sort of like simple lines, you can basically come through and then you can find the different versions of this. So say something like this. There we go. And you can adjust. Now, the mixed basic noise set to 0 basically will shut off the first noise scale that we had on the top and only drive via the plugin scale. So that's the main difference. You can come in and hit edit and make those adjustments as necessary. Now, Maxon actually is really known for their noises. So if I were to hit delete on this, go back in and start a new one, go to UV, go into surface, or go into noise plugin, and then go into Maxon surface noise. Maxon has been notoriously known for a ton of their noises. And so you actually have a bunch of different features up here you can grab. So you can say like, oh, wavy, turbulent. Yeah, that sounds good. Now let me go through and I'm going to turn off the mix basic noise. But now we're going to add in some strength. And let's see if we can make this happen. Maybe relative strength, turn that off. There we go, turn off relative. And now I have these different ones like this. So I can have these noises. Maybe I want, actually, instead of wavy, maybe I want, I don't know. What's a popular one? I believe Luca is super popular. Yeah, so there's Luca. And then here's what's really cool to know is that I can actually gradient my mask and I will get that noise fall off as well. So there's a ton of little things like that to know, but that's the majority of stuff to really work on with surface noise. Once you're done with this, okay, then you just hit apply to mesh to make that one to mesh, and then that will do its thing. If there's enough topology, that will work. Or you could say mask by noise, and then by doing this, it's actually going to take that pattern and mask everything off that's not that pattern. And then then you could come in and you can do some sculptural changes itself. So you can actually take like the clay buildup brush as example, maybe adjust the focal shift, and you could do like a custom paint. Maybe you're looking for specific cracks on just some of the model instead of other models. So that's something that you can ultimately do as well. And then I know I'm tangenting here, but the last thing you can do is you can actually apply this to any brush. So I could say, you know what, edit, I'm going to go ahead and copy this noise. And now I'm going to go to my standard brush, and I'm going to open up my brush menu. I'm going to close down my brush menu, and I'm going to go into surface noise with my brush menu. I'm going to hit paste and hit close. Now, what I'm going to do is delete this surface noise from the actual tool menu, and now I just have it on with the actual brush, and now I can paint that noise with that mask. And if I hit edit, I can come through and make my adjustments, but that's going to help me paint noise exactly where I want that to be. Pardon me. So that's where you can do specific brushes or nice fun brushes like this pattern brush, which is exactly how this pattern brush works in ZBrush. It's just literally surface noise with local projection mode and dynamic scaling turned on. And so I can come through and paint all of this directly on. And that's how those pattern brushes work. So there's your crash course in surface noise. Hopefully that was helpful. Oh man, a lot of stuff. Let's see. Is there a way to change the brush default globally? For example, RGB is turned on by default. All brushes that prefer it to stay off. Yeah, you should be able to. What I would say, I believe the way to do it is to just like, let's say you have your brush on here and you have this turned off. You can actually just save this brush. Does it do it that way? Hold on, my brain just dropped. You can save the brush setting that way, and then it should load up that way each time. Like you can overwrite and save these brushes the way you need them to be. But I believe, did you do something as like RGB turned on? What's defaulted on? This is defaulted on. Then you just save the brush that way, and then that should relatively do that for you. So if you wanted to have like, let's say the standard brush on that way, but maybe you want that MRGB turned on that way, I would just save that brush that way. save as, come in and then put it as a brush, save it in your brush presets like normal, and that should do it for you. Is there another way that I'm blanking on? I don't think so. I want to say I want to say that's the way to pretty much do it. There might be, I think there's a plugin. I don't know if it's supported anymore, but there is a startup plugin, and then that should also do it as there. So if you have something you want turned off on a brush, just save over that brush. And for Windows, all you need to do is go into your main folder here. If you're going to save over anything, go into your local disk, go into your program files, go into your ZBrush folder. So mine's Maxon 2024, and then from there, your ZBrushes, and then here's everything, right? So your standard brush exists in here. Just save over this brush, save over the brush, and then you should be good to go. That's the way I would. I'm pretty sure that's the way to do it. I think so. There's so many things that I have ahead. Not a problem. Let's see. This is precisely the reason why I'm trying to polygroup my model. I'm trying to use UVs to create patterns on clothing, but the UVs I tried to make via painting make the textures flow in the wrong direction. Hopefully creating UVs by polygroup will allow that more control. It should allow it for more control. Yeah, absolutely. We understand that our UV tools inside of ZBrush aren't necessarily the best. So we do have some ways to get some quick UVs, but yeah, as we are aware of that, and that's something that we're looking into at some point. So currently, right now, you can unwrap with UV Master via polygroups or use the crease. I would say using crease edges is my more preferred way of doing it, and it seems to work out pretty well. Was there a script to turn off dynamic for all brushes? Do I think it's possible with a script? It is possible with a script, absolutely. But yeah, you could just turn off dynamic by coming up to the draw size and then hitting this dynamic button right here. You also have remember dynamic mode per brush. So you can actually turn this on right there. And then so dynamic mode is turned on with this one. But if I go to, let's say, clay buildup, and then let's turn off dynamic mode. There we go. So now dynamic mode is turned off on clay buildup, but I go back to my standard brush and it's now turned on. So you can actually just say remember dynamic mode per brush. It's literally this button right here. And that should remember the dynamic setting for you. Same thing with the draw size per brush. If you are constantly like, you're in damn standard and you're making some like fine edges, you're like, yeah, this is really cool, right? But then you go to your clay buildup and now your brush is like, needs it to be massive. So now you're like sculpting, but now you go back to damn standard. And now you got to rescale this down. Just hit this button here, remember draw size. So now with my dynamic, my damn standard, I have this nice small brush here. Then when I go to clay buildup, look, my brush is now big. I can just make some adjustments here. Go back to damn standard. Oh, look, my brush is small and it's the exact same size. So that's also another one. So you could just do dynamic mode per brush, or you could do draw size per brush. No real script needed. I think at one point it was a script, and then I think they made it into a feature. So anyway, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. I know we didn't get anywhere near making this guy fully, but I had so much fun asking all these questions, or answering these questions rather, and it's really cool to have you guys come in and chat and hang out. So appreciate you all stopping by. We will continue to do this guy in the next stream. I should be streaming next week. So let me just go through and hit save. I'm not going to do anything to this project. I'm literally going to continue it forward. So this might be a part 1 and then part 2, and we'll move it forward that way. Yes, absolutely. So that's going to be it for today. So thank you all for everything. I only know the script for dynamic. If you look up on Google, you'll find ZBrush Central, but not for RGB. Maybe you can edit the script too. I think for the RGB thing, and I don't know if we still have it anymore, but let me see something. I'll look it up for you real quick. It's called ZBrush. It's called ZBrush Startup. Wow, I can't spell. ZBrush Startup Utility plugin. I think this might be what you're looking for. Z plugins. There we go. And the one you should be looking for is startup utility right here. So try that. I'll drop a link right now. So startup utility, this should be the one for you to do this one. You also have what's called clean cool tool utility. So this helps automate your multiple subtools. There's a bunch of cool stuff in here. IMM extractor is actually pretty cool. And then, yeah, there's a bunch of, some of this stuff actually is already in ZBrush, and then some of it too, like Dynamesh utility, that's a little bit different. That doesn't ship with ZBrush. It's just another tool for it. So there's some stuff here. IMM draw size, that's actually one that I really dig. This one's pretty cool because it gives you an accurate sizing, but you could do the same. You could do the shortcut. It's basically making this faster, but with IMM brushes, if you didn't know, if I have an IMM brush and I draw this out, so that's a curve, so B for brush, I for IMM, and then let's just do bolts on his head. So here, if I grab like this Phillips head and I drag this out, if I want a consistently same size, you would think, oh, I'm just trying to guess, but all you have to do is press and hold Control, and that will give you the actual brush size for each one. What makes this IMM draw size so unique is you can set it to specific size. So if you have a 5mm bolt, it's literally like you type in 5 and then you draw it out, and then it's consistently 5mm. But all it's really doing is it's just calculating how big you need something to be, and then it's basically pressing Control for you. That's all. That's like literally all it's really doing. But what's cool about this is that if you press and hold Control, you're dragging, press and hold Control, you then can rotate, and you can position that while holding Control so that it looks different and more uniform, and it's following that normal. So now you can have all these different bolts on his head facing a different direction. But yeah, there's some really cool plugins, so you can check these out as well. But that startup utility, I think, is what you're looking for the RGB turned off by default. Anyway, that's gonna cover it. We got this guy. So yeah, thank you guys for everything. It's been super fun to come in and stream. We went over a little bit, but that is a-okay. I always enjoy it. So with that being said, I want you all to take it easy, have fun, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye, 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 bye.